The Fenner and S-Rank monstrosity capable of razing an entire city has plagued the village with relentless assaults. Desperate, the villagers exhaust their savings to enlist the flaming dragon Fong, a renowned adventurer party, to eradicate the threat. The scene unfolds with the party awaiting their formidable foe. As the Fenner emerges, it lunges at Kurt. Bandana reacts swiftly, attempting to ensnare the beast with her threads. However, the creature retaliates, wounding her. Their priestess Maris promptly heals her injuries. Regaining her footing, Bandana succeeds in binding the Fenner entirely, allowing Golnova to deliver the finishing blow with his flaming sword. With the menace vanquished, the village erupts in joyous celebration. Kurt reflects that this battle cemented the flaming dragon Fong's status as heroes. Later, as they dine in the village, Golnova, unimpressed by the food, demands Kurt cook instead. Kurt obliges without hesitation, revealing his role as the group's chore boy. Bandana also requests a meal, remarking that it will be his last, leaving Kurt puzzled. Golnova nonchalantly informs him that he is to be dismissed the following day. Perplexed, Kurt questions whether he has erred. They clarify that his contributions are minimal. He lacks combat prowess and cannot even defeat a mere slime. Malice explains that party regulations limit their numbers to 4 members. To grow stronger, they must recruit a high-ranked mage, which necessitates removing someone. Bandana bluntly states the obvious. Kurt is the expendable one. Kurt is the obvious choice for dismissal, no more valuable than the baggage he carries. Desperate, he pleads to stay, but Golnova literally kicks him out. Left adrift, he heads to the nearest city in search of work and enters an employment agency. A receptionist greets him and he states his purpose. She initiates an interview and aptitude assessment, inviting him to sit. Asked to introduce himself, Kurt shares his name, age, 15, and origins. Hast village in the Sheen Mountains. She reacts with surprise, unaware that a settlement exists there, and inquires about his past work. He admits to handling chores for the flaming dragon Fong. Recognizing the name, she recalls the party's recent promotion to double S-Rank. Kurt, disheartened, mentions they dismissed him soon after. However, she assures him that being affiliated with such a prestigious party is a strong qualification. Startled by this perspective, he listens as she shifts focus to the aptitude test. She explains that aptitudes are divine talents and there's a chance he possesses an undiscovered gift. Kurt elaborates. Aptitudes are ranked from G to SSS. He gives an example. One with low swordsmanship aptitude may struggle to cut steel, while a high-ranked individual can slice through effortlessly. Kurt's test results arrive, revealing all his combat aptitudes are G rank, leaving him disheartened. Kirel informs him that this severely limits his job prospects, though trade work remains an option. She adds that his aptitude for blacksmithing or alchemy is untested, but the technician handling it is absent, meaning he'll have to wait a week. With no money to sustain himself that long, Kurt expresses urgency. Kirel instructs him to lift a nearby sandbag, and as he does, he notices it subtly draining his mana. Observing his latent strength, she suggests construction work, mentioning a frontier town in Margraviate Tun's domain seeking laborers to repair its city walls. He agrees, and she drafts a letter of recommendation. The scene shifts to the worksite, where his boss sizes him up skeptically, doubting his capability for the job. However, being short-handed, he has little choice. Assigning Kurt to mix cement and mend the walls, he prepares to leave. Kurt considers reinforcing the cement with mana and tries to ask, but the boss ignores him, instructing him to process at least half a barrel within 3 hours before walking off. Kurt assumes that infusing mana into cement is common knowledge here, and feels relieved he didn't embarrass himself by asking. Surprised that half a barrel suffices, he resolves to give it his all. 3 hours later, his boss returns, stunned to find the entire western wall fully repaired. Kurt apologizes for not doing more, explaining that he ran out of cement. Bewildered, the boss asks how he managed to fix the upper sections without scaffolding. Kurt casually replies that he tossed the cement up and spread it with a long roller. Though incredulous, the boss can't argue the work is flawless. Impressed, he asks how long Kurt intends to stay. Kurt hopes for a week and the boss agrees, paying him all the cash on hand while promising to deposit the rest at his employment agency. Pleased with his earnings, Kurt resolves to work even harder the next day. By morning, the townspeople are astonished. The north and west walls are already restored. Seeing no choice, the boss fires Kurt. Shocked, Kurt protests that it's only been 3 days. The boss explains that the job was meant to provide work for the impoverished, but at Kurt's speed, there won't be any left. Kurt is taken aback, but his boss insists he's displayed the prowess of a SSS rank, urging him to leave for the capital. Handing over the remainder of his pay, the boss walks away. Kurt can't help but feel that he was paid and praised just to be sent away. Disappointed, he returns to the employment agency Hello Work, where Kirel begins searching for a new job for him. Just then, they overhear a commotion at the reception desk. A girl is arguing, insisting on hiring a miner but refusing to offer advance payment or proof of ore deposits. Kirel steps in, advising her to seek investors for a proper mining operation. However, the girl is desperate. She must pay taxes within a week or the mountain will be confiscated. Kurt volunteers for the job, revealing that he once worked in the mines of his village. Kirel warns him there's no guarantee of payment, but he remains undeterred. The girl, unimpressed, dismisses him as just a helpless child, insisting she needs a brawny dwarf. Kirel reminds her that hiring one would require an upfront payment of 10 silvers, money she doesn't have. Left with no alternative, she reluctantly hires Kurt, acknowledging his mining experience. As Kurt follows the girl outside, Kirel muses that he's too kind for his own good. With his looks, she jokes, he could make a fortune in the pleasure quarters. Her daydreaming is interrupted when the receptionist hands her a transfer for Kurt. Assuming it's leftover wages from construction, she's stunned to see 200 gold coins, an absurd amount. Distracted, she trips over the sandbags from earlier. A colleague informs her they aren't ordinary sandbags but mana gauges, growing heavier based on a person's mana pool. Only those at a court mage's level can trigger them, making them difficult to use. As they prepare to return them, she casually lifts one, finding it light. Recalling Kurt struggling with them, she begins to wonder who he really is. Meanwhile, Kurt arrives at Alicia's campsite and finds only a single tent. He hesitantly asks if they'll be sharing it. She assures him it's spacious enough, but he's unsure about sleeping so close to a girl as charming as her. Flustered, she insists she isn't cute. Unfazed, he remarks that he's traveled far and never seen anyone as beautiful. Mortified, she cuts him off, declaring that she's been an adventurer since she was 10. There's no way she's cute. She hands him a meal, and he realizes it's been ages since someone last cooked for him. As he eats, he finds the food surprisingly good. That night, they share the tent, but Kurt struggles to sleep. Glancing at her, he's startled to see her resting in only her undergarments. Embarrassed, he quickly retreats outside, musing that she's far too trusting. Unbeknownst to him, Yulia is awake. She was testing his intentions, ensuring he wasn't the type to take advantage of her. Seeing his restraint, she concludes he's a true gentleman. At dawn, she finds him asleep outside and notices her clothes have been mended. When he wakes, she questions him, and he casually admits to fixing them. Impressed, she remarks that he's in the wrong profession before urging him to prepare for the day. She reminds him they must earn 10 gold coins by week's end. When he asks about their excavation plan, she admits they'll dig at random. Skeptical of this approach, he opts to survey the area first. While inspecting the terrain, he stumbles upon an unusual stone. Cracking it open, they discover embedded gemstones. Kurt estimates a gemstone of this size could fetch 3 gold coins, leaving Yulia astonished. He proceeds to extract all the gems in the vicinity, but when she suggests selling them, he shakes his head. The stones are too small to be valuable on their own. They'll need to refine them into magic crystals first. She recalls that fewer than 10 magic craftsmen in the kingdom can create magic crystals, yet Kurt produces one effortlessly. Astonished, she notes that the process typically takes over an hour. He, however, assumes his mana reserves are insufficient to sustain such an output for long. Unaware of his misunderstanding, she realizes they aren't on the same wavelength. The scene shifts to Yulia preparing to sell the crystals while Kurt remains behind, tending to unfinished business. She assures him she'll return tomorrow and urges him not to overexert himself before departing, secretly finding his demeanor endearing. Later, she presents the crystals to a group of knights for inspection. They request documentation if the crystals were imported, but she asserts they were crafted domestically. When they press her for the atelier responsible, she refuses to disclose it. Instead, she flashes an insignia, revealing her past as an adventurer serving the royal family. Recognizing the emblem, the knights swiftly apologize. She then requests a teleportation stone to reach the capital, and they comply, unaware she no longer serves the crown. In the capital, she visits a magic shop and presents a crystal to the proprietor Mimo, intending to sell it. Mimo, unimpressed by its dim glow, appraises it at 10 silvers. Yulia sighs, having expected as much given how effortlessly Kurt crafted them. However, upon closer examination, Mimo's expression shifts. She retracts her initial offer and instead proposes 10 gold for a single crystal. Alicia questions why, and Mimo explains that this magic stone contains 10 times the usual mana. Its dim glow results from a specialized treatment preventing energy leakage. When Yulia reveals she has 49 more, Mimo promptly offers 500 gold for the lot. Before Yulia departs, Mimo makes 2 requests. First, she urges her not to sell these elsewhere, as other merchants would fail to grasp their true worth and the kingdom wouldn't permit such potent stones to circulate freely. Second, she demands to know the creator. Yulia refuses, stating she won't disclose the identity without permission. Mimo's demeanor shifts. She is not requesting but commanding. As the royal court mage, she reveals her status as equal to an honorary count. However, Yulia, no longer bound to the royal family, remains unfazed. Mimo concedes but insists the kingdom cannot afford to lose such talent. She urges Yulia to inform the artisan that the kingdom offers the directorship of a royal magic research lab and the title of honorary baron. Yulia acknowledges the message and departs, still bewildered. Upon returning to Semilla, she seeks information on Kurt from Kirel, who to her surprise is equally curious. Yulia presses for answers, but Kirel, bound by policy, refuses. However, when Yulia flashes her crest, Kirel relents, handing over Kurt's file. To Yulia's astonishment, all his combat aptitude ratings are marked as G. Kirel informs Yulia that Kurt was dismissed from his construction job within 3 days, yet received a staggering 200 gold as compensation. Taken aback, Yulia listens as Kirel explains that he single-handedly restored both the western and northern walls. Grateful for the insight, Yulia entrusts Kirel with depositing 499 gold into Kurt's account. Before departing, she issues a firm directive. No one is to receive information about him without her authorization as an adventurer affiliated with the royal family. Upon returning to camp, she is astonished to find a fully constructed house standing where their tent had been. She questions Kurt about building an entire home overnight, but he responds nonchalantly, stating that in his village, such feats were commonplace. Ulicia reveals that a friend wishes to recruit Kurt as a royal mage. If he accepts, he'll be granted noble status, along with a generous salary and full benefits. Despite the prestigious offer, Kurt is skeptical. It all seems too good to be true. However, Ulicia assures him the proposal is sincere. When she asks for his decision, Kurt surprisingly declines. Ulicia is baffled. Who in their right mind would reject such an opportunity? Honestly, I'm just as stunned. His reasoning, he believes he doesn't deserve a role that elevates him above others. Instead, he wants to return to being the errand boy for the Flaming Dragon Guild, even if it means begging for a spot. Meanwhile, the Flaming Dragon team is struggling against a formidable tree monster. Golva finds himself unable to conjure his usual fire magic and pleads with Marlapis for healing. She's been trying, but her magic isn't working as it should. Desperate, Golva urges the newcomer to use fire magic. But the rookie has no such skills. Fire is supposed to be Golva's specialty after all. Without Kurt to anchor the group, the party's cohesion has completely unraveled. Only Bandon seems aware that the team is falling apart. Meanwhile, Kurt continues assisting Ulicia with gemstone excavation. He informs her that he discovered a rich vein the previous day and can extract much more for her. Though Ulicia appreciates his dedication, she worries he might be overexerting himself. However, Kurt assures her that he managed to get 6 hours of sleep. Ulicia is visibly stunned. She starts calculating how he built an entire house and still rested that long. But Kurt misreads her reaction, thinking she's upset he slept too much. He apologizes, promising to atone for what he sees as laziness. At some point, Ulicia really needs to explain just how extraordinary Kurt's abilities are, but she has no clue how to approach the subject. So they simply continue mining. Kurt guides Ulicia to the location he discovered. Although it appears to be just another forest patch, he tells her valuable gems are likely hidden beneath. However, he warns her not to dig beyond 500 meters, as if anyone could do that by accident. As he starts walking off, Ulicia asks where he's headed. Kurt replies that he's off to another excavation site and will reconnect with her later. By evening, Ulicia has spent the entire day mining and finally uncovers a massive topaz gem. She had previously deposited all the gold coins from the magical gems into Kurt's account, since he was the one who discovered them. But this gem is her own find, meaning she can use the proceeds to cover her taxes. She briefly considers asking Kurt to refine it into a magic gem to boost its value, but ultimately decides against it. She doesn't want to exploit his generosity. Thinking of Kurt, she heads over to check on him. Given everything she's witnessed so far, she expected him to go overboard. But even so, she's shocked to find he's excavated an entire tunnel system in just 8 hours. Kurt eventually emerges, apologizing for his poor yield. He only managed to extract a small quantity of the gem he was searching for. The rest, he says, is just worthless rock he intends to discard. Ulicia peers into the cart and raises an eyebrow. The rocks look far too refined to be mere debris. She asks him what they are. Kurt casually replies that they're methyl ores. In his home village of Mur, methyl was so abundant in the mines that people usually tossed it aside as useless. Ulicia is speechless. Not only is she curious about what kind of village Kurt came from, but she also asks what gem he's actually been searching for, especially if he considers mithril worthless. Kurt pulls out a small stone and calmly says he's been hunting for orichalcum. Though he only gathered enough to fill a small box, it's staggering. Orichalcum, known as the metal of the gods, is valued at millions per gram, and Kurt just casually found a boxful. Ulicia is stunned. She didn't even know orichalcum could be found in areas like this. But Kurt nonchalantly replies, it's everywhere, you just have to dig 8 kilometers down. Deciding she's had enough mining for one day, Ulicia wraps up the job. With the topaz covering her taxes, her contract with Kurt concludes. That means Kurt must now look for new work. Still unaware of the mountain of gold quietly piling up in his bank account, on his way to the agency, Kurt unexpectedly runs into Bandina. Happy to see her, he asks what brings her there. She explains that she's no longer with Flaming Dragon, though the backstory is a bit chaotic. After the mission fiasco, Golva visited a 5-star restaurant in search of real food, but compared to Kurt's cooking everything tasted like trash. Enraged, Golva trashed the place and stormed out without paying. While walking through a narrow alley, Golva encounters Bandina. She scolds him, saying he went too far destroying that restaurant, but Golva couldn't care less. His only concern is finding food that matches Kurt's cooking. In his obsession, he orders Bandina to track Kurt down and drag him back, even if it means breaking his bones. Realizing Golva has completely lost his grip, Bandina doesn't argue. Instead, she quietly swipes his teleportation crystal and bolts out of the alley. On her way out, she spots city guards closing in on Golva's location. Without his crystal, arrest is inevitable. With Marlopus summoned by the church, the Flaming Dragon party has officially collapsed. Though she spares Kurt the full details of Golva's mental spiral, she does confirm the team's disbandment. Kurt is visibly disappointed, as this means he no longer has the chance to rejoin. Bandina, however, is baffled. Why would he even want to return? Kurt explains he owes Golva a great deal, still blissfully unaware of how terribly he was treated. His sadness is genuine. Bandina, on the other hand, never cared for Golva. He was merely a cover for her real mission, to observe Kurt. Since Kurt was on his way to the guild anyway, she assumes he's job hunting, and if so, she knows the perfect opportunity for him. Bandina mentions that a friend of hers, an esteemed atelier meister, is currently seeking an assistant. It's a promising opportunity, as atelier meisters are rare and wield influence equal to that of a viscount. She asks if Kurt is interested and he immediately agrees. Handing him a map, she sends him on his way. Kurt eventually arrives at the address but is puzzled. The place looks like an ordinary house. He knocks and to his surprise a small elf girl opens the door. At first he assumes she's the meister, which catches him off guard. However, the girl Michelle clarifies that she's merely the assistant. Kurt explains he's here for the job and Michelle is thrilled. She's been overwhelmed and desperately needs help. She leads him to the kitchen and the moment he steps in he's hit with the stench of a shipwreck. Michelle apologizes for the mess, explaining that the meister has been working her to the bone, leaving no time for cleaning. Just then, the meister calls out, and Michelle rushes off, asking Kurt to tidy up the kitchen in the meantime. Though slightly disheartened, he was hoping to assist the meister directly. Kurt obliges. 30 minutes later, the kitchen is spotless. With no further instructions, he begins to explore the house in search of Michelle. He comes across a closed door, knocks, and a voice from inside invites him to enter. As Kurt enters the room, he's immediately flustered. Lying casually on the bed is a nearly unclothed girl. He quickly averts his gaze and apologizes for the intrusion, but she appears entirely unfazed by his presence. Kurt explains that he's looking for Michelle, and the girl calmly informs him that Michelle is downstairs in the basement. Just as he turns to leave, Kurt notices a strange, ominous mark on her abdomen. His eyes narrow. It's unmistakably a curse. He politely asks if he may examine it more closely. She consents and Kurt approaches, carefully inspecting the area. Typically, such curses ravage the surrounding internal organs, often making eating excruciating. Yet surprisingly, her stomach appears unharmed. Realizing she may be malnourished, Kurt offers to prepare her a meal. Meanwhile, Ulyssia meets with Mimiko to discuss the startling value of the mithril and orichalcum Kurt unearthed. Even without being refined into magical crystals, their worth exceeds 50,000 gold coins. Ulyssia begins to grow increasingly concerned. Ulyssia asks Mimiko what she thinks would happen if Kurt's abilities were exposed. At best, he'd be abducted and enslaved, at worst, assassinated for being a threat. Mimiko then asks what Ulyssia intends to do with him. Ulyssia admits she's considering grooming Kurt into an atelier meister. That title would grant him enough status and protection to keep predators at bay. Her plan is to serve as his personal bodyguard. But getting Kurt on board won't be easy. He's oblivious to his own potential and constantly underestimates himself. Ulyssia knows she must act before he unknowingly walks into danger. Meanwhile, Kurt finishes preparing porridge for the girl he encountered earlier. Just then, Michelle and the atelier meister, Alia, emerge from the basement. Both are stunned to see the kitchen spotless. An impressive feat in such a short time. Alia notices the meal and asks. Kurt explains the girl he met upstairs mentioned being hungry. Alia's expression tightens, clearly concerned that Kurt encountered her. She makes him swear to keep it secret. Kurt agrees and Alia, satisfied, dismisses him for the day and rewards him with 3 silver coins. Kurt is stunned when Alia pays him generously just for cleaning the kitchen. She insists he earned it and asks him to return tomorrow. Later, Alia brings the porridge Kurt prepared to the cursed girl. She reminds her she shouldn't be seen by outsiders. Still, since Kurt seems harmless, Alia isn't too concerned about him revealing anything. As Alia prepares to test the porridge for poison, La stops her. She says there's no need. Her instincts tell her Kurt is genuine. After a lifetime of distrust, she wants to believe in someone for once. And with the curse already advanced, poisoning her would be redundant. Alia nods and allows her to eat. But the moment La takes a bite, she breaks into a cold sweat and collapses. Alarmed, Alia assumes the food was poisoned and prepares to hunt Kurt down. Then, unexpectedly, La rises to her feet. Energized, healed, The curse, once thought incurable, has vanished. Alia is speechless. Somehow Kurt's cooking had broken a spell no magic could touch. At that very moment, the clandestine group responsible for cursing La convenes in urgency. They've just learned the curse has been broken. Their plan to eliminate her from afar has failed, forcing them to consider more extreme actions. Later that evening, Alia and La arrive at Mimiko's shop with urgent matters to discuss. Once inside, La lowers her hood. The moment Mimiko and Ulysses see her face, they immediately recognize her. The third princess of the realm. Alia explains that a lethal curse had been cast on La in an assassination attempt. While the perpetrator remains unknown, La is the sole child born of the king and Princess Fran of the Gurumaku kingdom, her existence a living symbol of peace between two nations. Selma's involvement suggests a deliberate attempt to ignite war. Though relieved by Lee's survival, Mimiko is astonished that such a formidable curse was undone. La quickly clarifies she wasn't the one who dispelled it. The curse was broken by a man named Kurt. At the mention of his name, both Mimiko and Ulysses freeze in disbelief. Despite everything, Ulysses still struggles to grasp how Kurt's humble porridge managed to dispel Princess Lislet's formidable curse. The fact that Kurt became entangled in such a complex situation less than a day after their separation leaves her even more astounded. Meanwhile, Mimiko has identified a short list of suspects potentially responsible for the attempted assassination via curse. Given that the attack bypassed the palace's anti-curse wards, she deduces the culprit must possess the skill to manipulate such high-level protections. Based on classified intel, 3 individuals fit the criteria. First, Sova Ristitz, the first general of the Royal Expeditionary Forces. Second, Tristan Meinhof, the bloated bishop of the Polarn Church, whose appearance suggests a lifetime diet of indulgence. And third, Isadora Arkmama, the kingdom's third queen. Oelia weighs in, speculating that if Tristan is indeed the perpetrator, he likely employed his fanatical followers to sabotage the protective wards around Lislet's chamber. Conversely, Lislet harbors suspicion toward her stepmother, the third queen, asserting that her unrestricted access to the palace would have allowed her to slip in undetected. Neither she nor Ophelia considers General Sova a viable suspect, citing his lack of magical aptitude. However, Ulysses challenges this, revealing his deep affiliation with the Thieves' Guild, an underground network notorious for procuring sensitive intel. Through them he could have easily tampered with the wards. With no definitive way to isolate the culprit, Ophelia proposes a trap, the creation of a fictitious atelier, operated by a fabricated atelier meister. Coincidentally, Lucelet has just turned 15, signifying adulthood by royal custom. She must now depart the palace to undergo a year of training. Ophelia decides to send her to this counterfeit atelier, ensuring the information is widely known. The expectation is simple. The culprit will attempt another strike, but before acting, they'll first need intel on the so-called Meister. To obstruct this, they'll appoint someone completely unknown, an enigma devoid of records or reputation. This will force the would-be assassin to investigate persistently, inevitably leaving behind a trail of clues. Now only one question remains: who will play the role of this phantom Meister? Ulysses already has someone in mind. Ulysses presents Ophelia with a top-grade magic crystal, crafted flawlessly by Kurt. The moment they see it, everyone realizes he's not only suited for the role of atelier meister but arguably overqualified. The following day, Kurt visits Ophelia's workshop, only to find it unexpectedly closed. Moments later, Michelle appears and informs him that her master and the princess left together the day before. She advises him to return tomorrow. As usual, Kurt, riddled with insecurity, convinces himself he must have done something to upset Oelia and cause the closure. While not entirely incorrect, the truth isn't quite what he imagines. With nowhere else to go, he wanders into a local restaurant. There he overhears a group of adventurers lamenting a dilemma. They've accepted a quest requiring a porter but lack one, and they can't afford the cancellation fee. Seeing an opportunity, Kurt volunteers, warning them that he's utterly hopeless in combat. Sina, unimpressed by his frail appearance, immediately rejects him, but her older brother Kantz, the heavily armored warrior, decides to give Kurt a chance. He explains the mission. They're hunting iron golems, monsters weighing over 200 kilograms. Naturally, they need someone strong enough to haul that weight as a porter. Kurt confidently asserts he can handle the weight, then effortlessly lifts both Danzo the samurai and Kantz the heavily armored warrior as if they were sacks of flour. And this is the guy who claims he's bad at combat. He could probably launch a monster into orbit. His impromptu display earns applause from the restaurant crowd and the porter role. As the party sets off, Kurt is formally introduced to the team. Their warmth and camaraderie catch him off guard. Unused to such kindness, he feels genuinely motivated to give it his all. They soon reach the territory of the iron golems. But before anything serious unfolds, Kurt steps on a slime and screams like a child watching their first horror film. Sina tells him to quit panicking and just stab its core. Unfortunately, Kurt's aim is so disastrously poor, he manages to stab himself instead. Sina quickly finishes off the slime, now fully aware that Kurt isn't just bad at combat, he's a complete liability, yet surprisingly, no one scolds him. Sina, Danzo, and Kant simply grow more vigilant, silently resolving to shield him from harm. Kurt is stunned. No yelling, no humiliation. And for the first time it dawns on him, maybe his last party really were just terrible people. They press onward into the golem's lair. Sina scatters luminous moss across the cave walls, casting a soft glow. Kurt spots goblin droppings nearby, a sign the cave houses more than just golems. Goblins are here too. Kent reassures him they can handle a few goblins easily. As they descend deeper, the cavern slowly takes on the ominous form of a true dungeon. Kurt notices something unusual about the cave walls, but before he can investigate, a goblin ambushes. Danzo reacts instantly, slicing it down with precise samurai grace. However, the sound draws an entire horde toward them. Realizing they can't win in a direct confrontation, Sina quickly suggests retreat. Amidst the chaos, Kurt, still examining the walls, uncovers a hidden passage. He alerts the group and he and Sina slip through just as the door closes behind them, leaving Kantz and Danzo outside. The two had made their choice to hold the line so Kurt and Sina could escape. While Sina desperately searches for another way out, they hear Danzo and Kantz shouting from beyond the wall. The odds are hopeless. The goblin swarm is overwhelming. They beg Kurt and Sina to flee. Kurt, fully aware of his physical limitations, doesn't see himself as a coward. Fueled by guilt and desperation, he demands they let him fight. Sina scoffs, reminding him he couldn't even defeat a slime. What help could he possibly offer in a real battle? If he stays, he'll only drag them down. Her words cut deep, and yet they aren't wrong. They did have to help him kill a single slime. Then, through the wall, he hears Danzo and Kantz again, accepting the possibility of death, but proud to fall while protecting others. Something in Kurt stirs. They see him as a comrade, a friend worth dying for. And for the first time, someone values his life. Overwhelmed with gratitude, he wonders why, but he smiles nonetheless. Meanwhile, Sina casts a revealing spell on the wall. The magic uncovers a new threat, 3 iron dragon golems lying dormant just ahead. Sina collapses, hitting the ground hard. Is this how it ends, she wonders, on the brink of death? Meanwhile, elsewhere, Lysolot and Yulisha are searching for Kurt. Lysolot especially is eager to see the man who gave her life meaning again. Upon entering the guild, they're stunned to learn he's followed the security unit into the mountains to fight. Yulisha immediately realizes the gravity. This particular mountain is teeming with goblins and survival chances are grim. She urges Lysolot to stay behind while she goes ahead alone. But Lysolot refuses. Why let someone else save the man who once saved me? Determined, she joins Yulisha on the climb, analyzing every footprint along the rocky trail. When the path ends, she relies on her heightened senses, following his scent like a bloodhound. Yulisha is left momentarily stunned. For her to recognize his scent, just how close were they? Not surprising, perhaps. He had seen her completely exposed. As the girls continue their search, back in the cave, Sina lies motionless, offering what sound like final words, those spoken when one knows death is near. She apologizes to Kurt for dragging him into this mission, but Kurt, baffled by her heavy tone, dismisses the drama. There's nothing to cry about, let's just clear a path and walk out. Clear a path, Sina thinks, eyeing the monstrous golems surrounding them. He doesn't even wait for a reply. Without hesitation, Kurt launches into action. In a blur, he strikes the iron golem's tail, then its spine, dropping the behemoth instantly. Is this really the same guy the first had to help kill a slime? Sina stares in disbelief as Kurt eliminates the remaining golems effortlessly with a single dagger. When she voices her astonishment, still sitting stunned on the floor, Kurt casually shrugs it off. He explains he's simply used to slaying them. Since he mines their cores, for someone with such overwhelming ability, his self-esteem is remarkably fragile. Yet, despite being blind to his own worth, he's incredibly attuned to the emotions of others. As Sina processes the scene, Ulysia bursts through the wall, clearly expecting to play the hero. Instead, she stops, dumbfounded. Watching Kurt stand among shattered golem remains, he rushes toward her, grasping her arm, pleading with desperation to save Danzo and Kane. They stayed behind because of me, because I'm worthless. If that's worthless, maybe I'd like to be useless too, Sina thinks. Ulysia, struck by the sight, recalls a legend of an unnamed S-Rank adventurer once whispered about. Could this be him? She wonders. Moments later, Lysolot arrives, her face lighting up the instant she sees Kurt. They assure him that Danzo and Kane are alive and well, thanks to Ulysia's support. With the team reunited, Danzo and Kane thank Ulysia for the rescue. But Ulysia reveals her true purpose. She's opening a new atelier, and wants Kurt to join her. Sensing his hesitation, she quickly adds, Ophelia recommended you personally. Kurt is thrilled but conflicted. He doesn't want to abandon this newfound group. Kane's loud voice breaks the moment. You'd turn down that opportunity just to stay with us? But sensing the bond among them, Ulysia smiles and offers a compromise, inviting the entire party to join her atelier. Before parting, Ulysia tells Kurt that he's never truly assessed his own potential, and since he's set to join the 8th atelier, a proper evaluation is necessary. As the Secura team departs to celebrate their new appointments, Kurt is taken to Mimiko for testing. She's visibly thrilled to be the one assigned to evaluate him. Once the tests conclude, Ulysia returns, eager for the results. Honestly, so am I, as expected. The standard assessment pegs him at B rank for cooking, cleaning and mining, with a C rank in other skills. But the Hello World system, which reveals the true capabilities of S-rank adventurers, uncovers the shocking truth. Kurt is ranked SSS across all categories. In raw magic output he even surpasses Mimiko. She admits with clear concern that revealing this information could put Kurt's life in danger. People might kill to eliminate such a threat. For his own safety his abilities must remain a secret. Not that there's much risk. Kurt himself is still blissfully unaware of his own strength. Still, Kirsha happens to overhear the results. With panic in her eyes she covers her ears, pretending she heard nothing. The weight of that knowledge is too dangerous to carry. As for Kurt, I can't wait to see the day he finally realizes who he truly is. The following day, the group promptly departs for the town where the new atelier workshop is to be established. However, Ulysia has yet to reveal the identity of the new atelier meister, leaving Kes both curious and eager to meet this mysterious figure. Caught in a corner, Ulysia fumbles to invent plausible excuses, unable to disclose the truth. By now Senna has grown suspicious. She's already discerned that Ulysia's motives for hiring their party weren't purely altruistic, especially given how evasive she becomes whenever Kes inquires about the Meister. As the town comes into view, Kurt recognizes it instantly. This is the same place where he once repaired the outer walls. Haunted by the belief that the Margrave dismissed him for incompetence, he grows visibly uneasy about returning. Eventually, Ulysia guides the group to the designated site of the new atelier, but rather than a structure, they find only a barren plot of land. Kes points out the obvious. There's no workshop here to work with. Ulysia, fully aware, casually informs them that they'll be staying at an inn while Kurt constructs the facility from scratch. She then turns to Kurt, asking if he can complete the building within a day. While even Kurt finds that timeline absurd, he estimates he could finish in about 3 days. Ulysia reassures him there's no rush, he may take as long as needed. She adds that if he requires any special materials he should feel free to request them. Relieved, Kurt produces a detailed list of supplies including items like amethyst crystals and griffin feathers. Senna, puzzled by such extravagant requests for a simple workshop, begins to wonder what Kurt is really planning. Ulysia, however, doesn't question him. She merely promises to procure the items, though it will take 2 days. Kurt accepts the delay without complaint. Singa still can't shake the nagging sense that something is amiss, and Ulysia is beginning to notice her growing suspicion. Nevertheless, both women maintain a facade of normalcy. For now, Ulysia instructs the group to head to the inn immediately so Kurt can begin his work undisturbed. Before they part ways, she gently reminds Kurt to take care of himself, insisting that he return by nightfall to rest and eat properly. He reluctantly agrees. Once the group arrives at the inn, Ulysia gathers everyone for a serious discussion. Until now, Kans and Danza have believed Kurt to be an ordinary man, but with the truth threatening to surface, especially after Sina witnessed some of Kurt's remarkable feats, Ulysia knows she can't keep it concealed much longer. Before revealing anything about Kurt, Ulysia formally introduces herself. She presents a royal crest and discloses that she serves the royal family as an adventurer. Then, gesturing to the woman seated across from them, she reveals her to be Li, the third princess of the kingdom. The revelation stuns everyone. Kans instinctively rises, intending to show proper respect, but Li quickly assures him that it isn't necessary. She's in hiding and wishes to be treated as an ordinary girl for the time being. With that out of the way, Sina cautiously asks if Kurt is royalty as well. Ulysia clarifies that while not of noble blood, Kurt is far from ordinary. In truth, Ulysia herself doesn't fully understand who or what Kurt is. She only knows that while all his combat abilities are officially rank G, every other skill he possesses is an astounding SSS rank. The group is stunned. SSS rankings are the stuff of myth, rarely, if ever, encountered in real life. And yet, given what they've seen Kurt do, the claim seems plausible. Ulysia then reveals that Kurt's true skill levels are classified, and none of them are permitted to speak of it. Even Kurt himself is unaware of the truth, having been misled by Ulysia and Mimiko into believing he's merely a B rank. In reality, the new atelier meister is Kurt. But for now, Ulysia has no intention of letting him discover that. Seda abruptly rises, her voice laced with fury, and demands an explanation from Ulysia. She can't comprehend why she would deceive Kurt so blatantly. Ulysia weakly defends herself, claiming Kurt wouldn't believe her even if she told him the truth. Seda snaps back, saying that's a pathetically poor excuse. Ulysia insists her intentions are to protect Kurt. If word of his abilities were to spread, people might attempt to manipulate or harm him. But from Seda's perspective, Ulysia is already the one exploiting him. Ulysia has no rebuttal. She falls silent. Seda, clearly disillusioned, turns away from the conversation, distancing herself from the growing chaos. After a pause, Danzo quietly asks for clarification. Lee steps in, explaining that just days ago Kurt saved her life. He lifted a lethal curse from her using nothing more than a simple bowl of porridge. Someone is targeting her, and this entire Atelier Meister operation was created as a front to bait the assassins and uncover the mastermind behind the attacks. Of course, Kurt knows none of this. It may seem selfish, Lee admits, to involve him without his knowledge. But both she and Yulisha care deeply about Kurt. They'd never allow harm to come to him. Lee looks to the group and asks if they're willing to keep the secret and work alongside them to safeguard Kurt. As adventurers, Danzo states, they're under no obligation to obey royalty, but Kurt is their friend. That alone is reason enough to stand by him. Kanz agrees wholeheartedly. Lee is relieved by their support, but Seda remains skeptical. She reminds them they've only known Kurt for 2 days, yet they're acting like lifelong companions. Yulisha understands her doubt. Despite speaking of Kurt as if he were an old friend, the truth is she only met him a week ago. Even now, she's still struggling to believe everything he's accomplished in such a short time. Seda sighs and says she needs time to think. She steps out, needing fresh air and a clear head before making any decisions. While outside, Seda finds herself drifting toward Kurt's worksite, intent on telling him the truth about his strength. But to her astonishment, in just a few hours Kurt has already completed the workshop's entire foundation. She asks if he truly built it alone. He nods, thinking it's unremarkable. After all, Yulisha told him he's only B rank. But no B-rank artisan could achieve such a feat. His perception of rank is completely skewed. In his hometown, constructing a dozen houses in a day was standard, so by his measure he's moving slower than usual. Still conflicted, Seda gently asks if he resents being burdened with so much labor. But Kurt shakes his head. He finds the work fulfilling. Back when he was part of the Heroes Party, they constantly called him useless and eventually cast him out. Here, however, people genuinely appreciate him. And that recognition means more to him than anything. Meanwhile, Danzo is in the town square preparing to meet a crucial informant, a woman bearing a strong resemblance to Bandana. She reveals something shocking. Bibinote, the porter Danzo's party originally hired before recruiting Kurt, was actually a spy. His mission was to sabotage their group from within under orders from jealous rival adventurers. The informant has already tracked Bibinote's whereabouts and provided Danzo with exact directions. He pays her handsomely for her service. Later that night, in a dimly lit tavern, a bald sleazebag broods over his failure. The waitress had recoiled in disgust at his unwelcome advance, and worse, his plot to annihilate Danzo's team fell apart, yet he isn't finished. Word has reached him that Danzo's party is now stationed at an atelier workshop linked to the third princess. If he targets the operation, especially the M, he believes he can still extract significant profit from the chaos to come. Danzo calmly asks the man if he's enjoying his final drink. Bibono turns pale the moment he recognizes him, then bolts. He dashes down a narrow alley, but a carefully set tripwire sends him crashing to the ground. Danzo approaches slowly, sword in hand. Initially, Danzo dismissed Bibono's sudden illness during the mining expedition as a coincidence, but now it's clear. It was a ruse from the start. Bibono feigns ignorance, but Danzo isn't buying it. He raises his blade and slashes toward Bibono's neck, then stops short. Killing him isn't worth staining his hands, not yet. Danzo warns him, stay away from his party or next time he won't hesitate. He turns and walks away. From the shadows, Bandana watches, disappointed. Leaving Bibono alive is a risk, one she intended to eliminate herself. But before she can act, 2 cloaked men appear and carry Bibono off. Bandana immediately recognizes them as members of the Phantom Squad, agents directly under Royal Court Mage Mimiko. Why Mimiko is involved in this affair puzzles her. Just then, her messenger crow arrives with a letter. It's from her superior, ordering her not to interfere. This case falls under Marlis jurisdiction. Frustrated, Bandana backs off. With nothing more to be done, she decides it's time to return to Kurt's village. Elsewhere, however, things have taken a turn. Marlis has been captured. She's now held within a complex magic circle, powerless. The next morning, Danzo and Kanz awaken to a stunning sight. Kurt has completed the workshop. Not only that, he landscaped the area with full-grown trees and hedges, all within a single day. While the group is speechless, Lee is lost in a daydream, imagining a life with Kurt, married and living in this idyllic home. Kurt then appears and warmly invites them inside. He gives them a tour, showcasing the intricately designed entry hall, 2 basement levels, and a water purification system powered by magical gems. He's even created personalized bedrooms for each of them, and a specialized chamber for the Atelier Master. That said, Yulisha still hasn't revealed the identity of the Atelier Master to Kurt. Unwilling to admit that he holds the title, she fabricates a story about the Master being too busy and swiftly changes the subject, asking where Kurt's room is. Kurt, plagued by low self-worth, believes he doesn't deserve a room at all. In his mind, he's only good for chores and had planned to sleep in a broom closet. The group quickly shuts that idea down. Since the atelier master's room is unoccupied, they urge him to use it instead. It takes a full 2 hours to convince him he's worthy. Later, Ulysses asks if he can erect a protective barrier around the house to ward off curses. Kurt admits he's never attempted such magic, so she resorts to using Mimiko's pre-made seal spells instead. She spends the night placing them around the property. The final seal must be positioned outside Lisa's room. As Ulysses approaches to place it, Lisa hears footsteps and assumes, eagerly, that Kurt is coming to visit her. She flings open the door only to be visibly deflated when she sees Ulysses instead. Lisa had been fantasizing about sharing a bed with Kurt. Ulysses, unimpressed, scolds her for her inappropriate thoughts and warns her not to take advantage of Kurt's naivety. Given his eagerness to feel useful, he'd likely comply with any request, no matter how indecent. The next morning, Kurt is preparing breakfast when Lisa enters wearing only an apron. Ulysses explodes, accusing her of trying to seduce him, but Lisa casually reveals she is wearing clothes underneath. Once breakfast is served, everyone gathers at the table, heaping praise on Kurt for his delicious cooking. Meanwhile, Ulysses wonders aloud why Kurt isn't with them. Lisa recalls overhearing him mention he was off to clean the mansion, as someone had defaced the walls with what he believed was graffiti. Ulysses' face drops. She instantly realizes he must be referring to the barrier spells she carefully placed the night before. Normally, such enchantments can't be removed with a mere cloth, but this is Kurt. Panicked, she bolts to stop him but arrives too late. Every protective seal has been scrubbed away. Kurt, unaware of their purpose, had mistaken them for harmless scribbles. Since Ulysses never disclosed the attempted curse assassination on Lisa, Kurt had no idea those symbols were vital. Now, Lisa is once again exposed to curses, completely unprotected. And with Mimiko absent, there's no one available to recast the enchantments. Ulysses stands frozen, unsure of what to do next. Several days had passed since the incident, and fortunately, no further attempts had been made on Liza's life. Yulia felt a profound sense of relief seeing the princess so lively and unharmed. Though Kurt had dismantled the magic circles intended to repel curses, Yulia wondered whether their adversaries remained unaware of Liza's whereabouts, or if Kurt's culinary creations were quietly neutralizing the curses without detection. Meanwhile, Mimiko had arrived in the city and expanded her intelligence network to root out potential threats. With her support, Yulia believed they could finally relax for now. Sampling a cake Kurt had baked, Yulia was utterly bewitched by its flavor. Liza also lauded the cake's taste, prompting Kurt to reveal he had crafted it using rice flour. Liza fondly recalled that it was Kurt's rice porridge that had once shattered a powerful curse afflicting her. She playfully requested that he prepare the porridge whenever she might fall victim to another spell. However, Kurt assured her there was no longer any need for concern. Startled, Yulia pressed him on how he could be so certain, especially since he had previously admitted the difficulty of erecting a proper anti-curse barrier. Kurt explained that although creating a new ward within the building was impossible, the structure itself being a giant reflective barrier, he had subtly altered its function. Now, instead of rebounding curses onto their casters, the barrier absorbed the curses and caused the afflicted to emit a radiant glow, ensuring no one would suffer harm. Upon hearing this revelation, Yulia quickly departed to inform Mimiko and the others. Seizing the moment, Kurt invited Liza to accompany him on a shopping trip. Though clearly yearning to accept, Liza's expression turned sorrowful. She knew she could not yet risk venturing beyond the sanctuary of the building. Elsewhere, General Alraid and his adjutant patrolled the city's perimeters, shrouded in an unsettling heavy fog. General Alraid sensed an ominous tension in the air, yet his adjutant reassured him there was little need for concern, citing the thorough repairs made to the city walls. He reminded Alraid that he personally oversaw the project to prevent infiltration by enemy spies. Alraid affirmed this, explaining that his vigilance was necessary to safeguard the city's integrity. Meanwhile, Mimiko, Alia, and Yulia discovered a dead curse user whose body still emitted a radiant glow. Mimiko reported that her spies had found him already deceased. Observing the phenomenon, Alia marveled at Kurt's barrier, remarking that its reflective properties remained active even after death. She suggested that with Kurt's full cooperation, they could likely resolve the situation within a day. However, Yulia objected, unwilling to expose Kurt to unnecessary risk. Suddenly, alarms blared across the city as an army of skeletal monsters approached the walls. General Alraid and his assistant were briefly shaken but swiftly rallied the troops. Alraid resolved to defend the city to his last breath, ordering his adjutant to oversee the civilian evacuation. Yet, in a baffling turn, the skeletons marched straight into the wall and vanished without a trace. The strange phenomenon quickly spread through the ranks, and even Yulia received confirmation via Mimiko's network. Analyzing the situation, Yulia deduced that the monsters were being absorbed into the western wall, the very section Kurt had repaired. The first wave was entirely consumed, but larger forces loomed on the horizon. The mastermind behind the assault was revealed to be Marlies, the healer from Kurt's former party. After the arrest of their party leader, Marlies was exiled by the bishop despite her pleas of innocence. The bishop, unmoved, condemned her for tarnishing the church's reputation. Nevertheless, he offered her a path to redemption and a promotion to official priesthood, should she succeed in this mission. Marlipus, driven by curiosity, eagerly awaited the bishop's explanation. Pouring an expensive wine, the corpulent cleric finally divulged the mission details. The moment Marlies drank the wine, the bishop revealed its cruel twist. Her task was to assassinate the third princess, Liza. Stunned, Marlies felt a curse swiftly bind her body. The bishop coldly explained that the wine was tainted and she would be unable to consume anything but water until Liza was dead. Initially, Marlies accepted the mission, believing obedience to the bishop, a supposed emissary of their god, was her duty. Yet she soon realized the bishop had forged a pact with a demon to orchestrate Liza's death. By then, however, it was too late to turn back. In the present, the demon siphoned Marlies' magic to summon additional skeletons, and Marlies realized too late that she was nothing more than a sacrificial pawn. The next day, Yulia informed Liza and Kurt about the oncoming wave of skeletons emerging from the nearby ruins. She reported that any skeletons touching the repaired sections of the wall were immediately destroyed. Kurt nonchalantly remarked that in his village it was common knowledge that skeletons are purified upon contact with walls. Yulia was hardly surprised by Kurt's casual revelation, but she knew he had only repaired a third of the city's defenses. The rest remained dangerously exposed. Formulating a plan, Yulia instructed Liza and Kurt to stay within the safety of the building while she moved to eliminate the source of the monsters. Kurt offered to accompany her, but Yulia flatly refused, reminding him that he was no fighter. His sole duty was to protect Liza. Before departing, Yulia retrieved the magical crystals crafted by Kurt, intending to wield them against the skeletal forces. She then gathered Namiko and Alia and made her way to the Knights' barracks, where General Alraid was desperately drafting strategies for the city's defense. Surprised by the arrival of such distinguished figures, Alraid listened as Yulia declared that they had come for one purpose: to ensure the safety of Princess Liza. Yulia immediately took command, instructing Alraid to divert the monsters and carve a path to the ruins so she could eliminate the source. Alraid protested the danger, but Yulia revealed the magic crystals Kurt had crafted, assuring him they would suffice. Reluctantly, Alraid agreed to her plan but insisted on accompanying her, leaving the city's defense to his deputy. At the city gates, they faced a massive horde of undead. Yulia ordered everyone to close their eyes as she hurled a crystal into the crowd. Upon contact with a zombie, the crystal exploded in a brilliant flash, purifying all nearby monsters instantly. Even Yulia was astonished by its power, but with no time to linger, she and Alraid immediately charged forward. Meanwhile, back at the workshop, Kurt struggled with feelings of helplessness. Remembering a master blacksmith from his village, he decided to forge a weapon, hoping it might contribute. After crafting a short sword, he found it lacking and was about to discard it when Liza entered. Curious about the blade, Kurt explained that although the sword fell short of his expectations, it could activate a magic spell if raised overhead. Liza, delighted by the weapon, insisted she loved it. Moved by her sincerity, Kurt gifted the sword to her. She thanked him warmly, but Kurt sensed her smile masked deeper fears. Gathering his courage, he asked if someone was truly hunting her. Saddened, Liza admitted it was true. She was burdening her friends with the danger that followed her. She revealed that even now, Yulia had ventured to the western ruins to confront the threat on her behalf. Hearing this, Kurt recalled his own journey to those same ruins with his former party, a place once perfect for inscribing secret marks upon the ancient walls. Kurt suspected that the true threat to Liza's life was the minor graffiti monster Yulia had warned him about. Frustrated by his own weakness, he wondered if he was even capable of facing such a foe. Liza, sensing his turmoil, confessed that she too longed to confront her enemies, so her friends would no longer have to risk their lives for her. Kurt, deeply empathetic, shared her sense of helplessness. Determined, he proposed they head to the ruins together and defeat the monster themselves. However, Liza hesitated, pointing out that the city was surrounded on all sides by undead hordes. Undeterred, Kurt reassured her that there were always new paths to be found, and new ways to overcome their enemies. Liza's dresses for the ruins, determined to look stylish even before battle. She glances at the dagger Kurt gifted her, recalling his words. It contains a magic spell that activates when raised overhead. Intrigued, she unsheathes the blade and lifts it high, but nothing happens. Kurt reminds her it's time to leave. As she turns, something unexpected catches her eye. Meanwhile, Yulia and Aura battle waves of undead on their approach to the ruins. Despite the vice-captain drawing most of the horde away, the two are steadily overwhelmed. Yulia urges haste to locate the source of the infestation. Suddenly, she hears Aura cry out in pain. Turning, she sees him wounded, but before she can reach him, a swarm of monsters blocks her path. She reaches for a magic crystal, but just then adventurers from their atelier arrive to assist. Cans and Danjo engage the enemies, while Sina confirms the monsters are originating from beneath the ruins. Yulia instructs everyone to shut their eyes and shatters the crystal, its radiant burst obliterating the nearby creatures. The group presses on. Yulia hands Aura a vial, claiming it's just herbal soup. At the moment he drinks it, his injuries vanish without a trace. Auraid can't believe the potion was merely soup, but the adventurers assure him that Kurt's ingenuity never ceases to amaze. Suddenly, a fresh wave of monsters bursts from the ruins. Cans urges Yulia to press forward and leaves the enemies to his team. As Cans, Danjo and Sina charge into battle, Yulia and Auraid slip past the chaos and enter the ruins. Elsewhere, Marl grows dangerously weak. She realizes that if the demon forces her to summon 2 more waves, she won't survive. The demon checks on his forces and discovers them surrounding the vice-captain, only to watch them obliterated by a magic crystal. He's stunned, even Marl is baffled. She's never seen such power in a crystal. Sensing intruders within the ruins, the demon decides to personally greet them. Meanwhile, Yulia and Auraid reach the core chamber where monsters are being spawned. Yulia hurls a magic crystal to the floor, instantly vanishing the creatures. Yet she's unsure if the true source has been neutralized. As they proceed deeper, the demon appears to confront them. Yulia identifies him as the final adversary and lunges. She launches a crystal into the air, slicing through it to release a searing burst of light. Though powerful, it fails to exorcise the demon. He smirks and claims her strike might have ended him, if he didn't possess infinite lives. Suddenly, Auraid attacks, but the demon doesn't even flinch. His wounds regenerate instantly. He commends the pair, remarking they're impressive for humans. Before projecting a vision of knights still struggling outside, the demon mocks their foolishness for risking everything to protect the city and its princess. But Auraid stands firm, declaring that his knights will never allow a demon to act unchecked. In response, the demon vows to crush them completely. Summoning powerful beasts, he boasts that the adventurers guarding the ruins' entrance won't stop them, and the city walls will soon fall. As he revels in his speech, Yulia and Auraid launch a surprise attack. The demon, unfazed, casually retrieves his severed head and reattaches it as if he were made of toy bricks. Yulia's confidence begins to waver. No matter what they do, the demon remains unscathed. If his creatures truly breach the city's defenses, countless lives will be lost. Seeing the fear in her eyes, the demon grins, assuring her that her nightmares will soon become reality. Meanwhile, Marl, exhausted and starving in the summoning chamber, lacks the strength to flee or dismantle the magic circle. Longing for one final taste of Kurt's cooking, she suddenly hears his voice nearby. At first, she assumes it's a hallucination, until Kurt breaks through the floor and emerges from below. Shocked to find Marl, he helps Lies to her feet. Marl realizes Kurt must know of her involvement in the princess's assassination plot, and believes he brought the princess here to sway her. Lies, puzzled, asks about the unconscious woman on the summoning circle. Kurt calmly replies that she's a nun and the healer from his former party. Marl admits she's no longer a nun, exiled from the church. Kurt asks if that's why she targeted Lies, but before she can reveal that Bishop Tristan is behind everything, he cuts her off, accusing her of going mad after being fired and drawing bizarre circles everywhere. Marl is bewildered, but Lies hears everything and pieces together the truth. The real enemy is the bishop. Kurt scolds Marl for her graffiti, and Lies thanks him for getting angry on her behalf. Marl, utterly lost in their nonsense, watches as Kurt abruptly asks, "Where's Ulisha?" She should have arrived by now to deal with the summoning circle. Marl informs him that Ulisha is upstairs. Kurt decides to go find her but tells Lies to stay behind for her safety. Lies insists on joining Isha, assuring him there's no need to worry. After all, her would-be assassin is right in front of them, and she still has the enchanted knife he gave her. As the princess departs, Marl silently curses Kurt's stupidity for sending Lies to her doom. But then, Kurt readies a mop and wipes the summoning circle clean in a single stroke, breaking the ritual. Marl is stunned. The demon feels the rupture instantly and is forced to dodge Yulia and Auraid's renewed assault, no longer shielded by invincibility. Yulia attempts to activate a magic crystal, but the demon bats it from her hand. Declaring their deaths imminent, he lunges, only to pause in surprise as Lies arrives. Without hesitation, the demon drives a precise blow into her heart. All are left in shock. Lies collapses and Ulisha panics. The demon cackles, mocking the princess for helping him complete his task. But then Lies' body dissolves into radiant butterflies, leaving everyone stunned. Moments later, the real Lies materializes behind Yulia and Auraid. The demon is baffled. He struck what felt like a living human. Lies calmly explains it's the effect of the knife Kurt crafted. It conjures flawless illusions, capable of deceiving even the keenest senses. He lunges again, only to strike another illusion. The real Lies appears by the magic crystal and shatters it. The demon howls in agony as the searing light engulfs him. Down below, Kurt hears the unearthly scream and wonders what chaos is unfolding. With the demon's demise, his summoned monsters vanish instantly. Relief washes over the group, but Ulisha erupts in anger, scolding Lies for endangering herself. Lies apologizes, saying she simply couldn't sit back and do nothing. Ulisha sighs, then admits she needn't apologize, she truly saved them. Alraid agrees, thanking the princess for rescuing him. Lies brushes off the formality, reminding them they all fought to protect the city. She promises to reward them. Without missing a beat, Alraid grins and requests an absurd quantity of alcohol to celebrate with his squad. Back in the basement, Kurt finishes cleansing the magic circle. Marl, weakened by the lingering curse, is famished. Hearing her stomach growl, Kurt offers her some rice balls he prepared. Though convinced she'll vomit due to the curse, Marl still wishes to savor Kurt's cooking one last time. The moment she takes a bite, she's stunned. The taste is exquisite. Even more shocking, the curse dissipates instantly. Overwhelmed, Marl finally understands how Kurt effortlessly nullified the circle. It dawns on her. He had been shielding their party all along, and they had simply taken his quiet strength for granted. She breaks into tears, apologizing. Kurt, ever composed, tells her it's enough that she's realized the truth. Just then, Lies and Ulisha descend into the chamber, but before reaching Marl, 2 Mimiko agents emerge from the hole to arrest her. As they drag her away, Marl silently hopes Kurt will vouch for her, but he simply promises to bring her favorite bread while she's in custody. Afterward, Lies and Kurt check on each other, and Ulisha stares at the pair in disbelief, wondering how these 2 clueless fools actually managed to save her. She slings an arm around Kurt and says it's time to head home. That night, a grand banquet is held for the knights. They devour their meals with solemn concentration. Kurt, having prepared all the food, watches in growing anxiety, convinced the knights are silently forcing it down out of politeness. Kurt, noticing the silent table, hesitantly asks if he should prepare something else. Alraid reassures him there's no problem. The food is simply too good, the knights are too captivated to speak. Relieved, Kurt smiles, thinking the site supervisor from his old construction job is a decent guy. But when he learns Alraid is actually the city's general, he's stunned. Alraid asks if Kurt likes the city. Kurt replies earnestly that he loves it. It's a peaceful, well-kept place. He assumes it's thanks to the general's leadership, until Alraid's aide bluntly interjects that Alraid is terrible at administration. Alraid promptly elbows him into silence. Suddenly, a fireworks display lights up the sky. The crowd watches in awe, and Kurt is quietly pleased. They're enjoying his work again. He had prepared the fireworks himself. Then Alraid and his aide realize their battle wounds have mysteriously healed. Kurt casually asks why they're so surprised. After all, it's common sense. A good meal can fix just about anything. The narrative shifts to the past, revealing a young Kurd searching for a girl named Hildegard, the daughter of a traveling merchant. He finds her and attempts to engage her in conversation, complimenting her striking horns, but she remains silent. Despite his repeated efforts, she offers no response, leaving him on the brink of frustration. Finally, Hildegard breaks her silence, explaining that her father warned her against speaking to people from Hast village, branding them as peculiar and cautioning her against adopting their odd ways. She admits that this is why she's been talking to herself, attempting to resist the village's supposed influence. Despite this rocky start, they soon form a bond, and Kurt takes her on a golem ride to show her the vibrant rainbow flowers. Along the way, Hildegard spots some enticing red berries and consumes them, only to quickly become disoriented and collapse. Kurt realizes the berries are poisonous and hastily crafts an antidote using one of the rainbow flowers. However, finding her too weak to drink, he has no choice but to administer it mouth to mouth. Back in the present, Ulisha wakes Kurt in a carriage, revealing that he had been dreaming about the event from a decade ago. They arrive at the village that had requested their aid, where the village elder informs them that their water reservoir has dried up, threatening their crops. Ulisha suggests seeking assistance from the neighboring town's larger reservoir, but the elder reveals that their previous attempts at negotiation were unsuccessful, hence their plea for the influence of an atelier to resolve the crisis. Ulisha returns to the carriage and inquires about the others. Danzo informs her that they went to assist an elderly man on the hill who had injured his back while tending to the birds. Ulisha deems it harmless enough and sets off for the neighboring village to negotiate. Upon arrival, she discovers that this village is also suffering from the same water shortage, with the locals resigned to merely praying for rain. As she speaks with them, a group of villagers arrives, urging the head to come to the hill between the two villages. Ulisha follows, finding a massive pond that wasn't there moments earlier, leaving her astonished at their claims of drought. Sina comments that the area was dry until recently, and Ulisha immediately recognizes this as Kurt's work. Moments later, Kurt appears, and she mentions hearing that he was aiding the birds. He clarifies that he drew water from the aquifer to hydrate the waterfowl, having noticed their plight. When Kurt asks if her negotiations are complete, Ulisha admits they are not, but both village chiefs express their gratitude, believing she has resolved the crisis in an unusual manner. Later, as they head back to the atelier, they find their carriage filled with eggs as thanks for their efforts. Kurt muses about using them to prepare something delicious and wonders when Lizelot will return. Ulisha explains that she went to deliver a report on the recent monster assault to Lord Taiwan and will be back soon. The scene shifts to Yulia and Alraid in conversation with Taeon, who warmly welcomes the third princess. She quickly clarifies that she is here not as royalty but as a representative of the Atelier Meister. Yulia notes that despite Taeon holding a rank akin to a duke as Margrave, his financial stability hinges on alliances, including ties to the royal family and the Gurumiku Empire. She senses his attempts to sway her to consolidate his influence and sees through his political maneuvering. Taeon then references rumors that they used magic stones capable of annihilating all monsters within a 500-meter radius during the recent assault, clearly fishing for information about the Atelier Meister. Yulia dismisses this as mere hearsay, firmly refusing to let Kurt become a pawn in his schemes. Shifting the topic, Taeon inquires if she is aware that this town remains unnamed. Yulia confirms, explaining that it is customary for a viceroy to grant a name, but no such official has been appointed here yet. Taeon laments the difficulty in selecting a suitable viceroy, noting the inherent dangers of a town so close to demon lands. Helraid acknowledges the challenge of finding someone for this role, and Taeon reveals his intention to appoint the new Atelier Meister as the viceroy. Yulia is taken aback, realizing that this would thrust Kurt into the public eye, a daunting prospect given his unawareness of his own status. She hesitates, noting that she lacks the authority to decide on this matter alone, but Taeon reminds her that she came as the Meister's representative, implying she should have the full mandate to make such decisions. Taeon is confident that none of the knights would oppose the Atelier Meister becoming their new viceroy, given his role in saving many of their comrades. Lizelot silently regrets not discussing Kurt's potential role with the general earlier, fearing he might say something reckless. Her worries prove valid as the general impulsively endorses the Meister as the viceroy. The princess attempts to counter this, but Taeon pointedly asks if she believes the Meister has some flaw that would disqualify him. Irritated, she snaps that there is no one more capable in the entire world, demanding that he retract his words. Realizing she has revealed too much, she quickly composes herself, while Taeon, pleased by her outburst, takes this as further confirmation of Kurt's suitability for the role. The scene then shifts to Lizelot informing Ulisha of her misstep. Ulisha ponders whether they could find someone to impersonate the Atelier Meister, but Lizelot dismisses the idea, noting that no one could match Kurt's vast knowledge, and the knights are already aware of his true identity. She further asserts that Kurt is unparalleled, a true gentleman without equal. When Lizelot inquires about Kurt's whereabouts, Ulisha mentions that he is currently focused on child-rearing, sending Lizelot into a brief panic as she imagines the worst. Ulisha quickly clarifies that one of the waterfell eggs they recently received was fertilized and close to hatching, calming Lizelot as she mutters that she hopes the creature doesn't turn out too unusual under Kurt's eccentric care. At that moment, Kurt announces that the egg has hatched. The scene shifts to Mimiko, overwhelmed by reports following the monster incident. Oilia informs her that Bishop Tristan was found dead in the Poland Church's cathedral. Mimiko immediately suspects assassination, concluding that the victim was likely the one who sold his soul to summon the demon lord, making him a convenient scapegoat for the church. Oilia then inquires about Maris, and Mimiko reveals that she spared her, sensing that Kurt intended to visit her. Oilia's gaze falls on the report Mimiko is drafting, which states that Kurt is being considered as the viceroy of the frontier town. Mimiko realizes she must address this as well, just as a shadowy letter arrives, informing her that the egg Kurt was tending has hatched, and something unusual emerged. Back at the atelier, Ulisha and Lizelot are stunned to find a young girl resembling a 3-year-old hatched from the egg. Ulisha struggles to comprehend this, remarking that humans don't hatch from eggs, and speculates that the girl is likely a monster, potentially adopting a human form to lower Kurt's guard. When the girl calls Kurt Papa, Ulisha becomes even more suspicious, warning that the creature could be a danger to them all. She demands that Kurt hand her over so she can eliminate the potential threat. Kurt vehemently refuses, insisting that the girl is harmless and pledging to take full responsibility for her. Ulisha hesitates, not wanting to harm the child, but steels herself for the sake of Kurt and Lizelot, preparing to take decisive action. Just then, the girl calls Ulisha Mama, momentarily softening her resolve and sparking fleeting visions of marrying Kurt. Lizelot interrupts her daydreams, seizing the girl, who then calls Lizelot Mama as well, sending her into a delighted frenzy. In her excitement, she accidentally drops the girl, but Sina catches her, earning a cheerful big sister from the child, further enchanting them all. Despite this, Ulisha remains wary, attempting to separate the girl from Kurt. However, Tan intervenes, declaring that Sakura will take responsibility for raising the girl to be good. Reluctantly, Ulisha relents as Sina hands the girl back to Kurt, who gently requests they keep her. Overwhelmed, Ulisha finally concedes, and Lizelot, overjoyed, suggests that they give the girl a proper name. Later, as the girl dozes off, the group gathers to brainstorm a fitting name. Sina points out that the girl already sees Kurt as her papa, with Lizelot and Ulisha as her mamas, proposing they combine their names for inspiration. However, a playful argument erupts over whose name should come first, waking the girl. She innocently asks why they are fighting and invites them to pick her up, instantly mending the tension. Kurt, observing her calming influence, suggests the name Akori, explaining that it signifies a point of connection, much like how this girl has already linked the three of them. The name resonates, and they all agree, with the newly named Akori happily embracing her new identity. That night, as Ulisha and Akori rest together, a figure from the shadows arrives, and Ulisha discreetly hands over samples of Akori's hair and saliva, hoping that Mimiko can uncover the girl's true nature. The following day, Kurt unveils a newly constructed room for Akori, which Ulisha quietly regards as both a sanctuary and a cell. It lacks windows and is reinforced with my plates on all sides, effectively making it escape-proof. Though she feels guilty for confining Akori this way, she resolves to keep her secured until Mimiko's findings arrive. Before departing on a new assignment, Ulisha entrusts Sina with Akori's care, reassuring the eager girl that they will play together upon their return. As Kurt and Ulisha set off in their carriage, Ulisha muses that they should finish their task swiftly to reunite with Akori, a sentiment Kurt echoes. To their surprise, a small voice joins their conversation, and they discover Akori stowed away inside the carriage. She leaps into Kurt's arms, cheerfully declaring that she went fush. Kurt sheepishly admits there must have been a flaw in his design, while Ulisha contemplates returning her to the atelier, concerned that the others might be frantic over her absence. Just then, a figure from the shadows approaches, cleverly disguised as a traveler. Ulisha quickly assesses their destination, correctly deducing that they are bound for the frontier town. She seizes the opportunity to request they relay a message to the atelier, impressing Kurt with her sharp intuition, silently appreciating that her earlier caution was born from genuine concern for everyone's safety. He feels the weight of his decisions, aware that his attachment to Akori may endanger everyone. Overwhelmed by guilt, he quietly weeps, prompting Akori to gently wipe his tears. Ulisha, noticing his distress, reassures him, urging him not to dwell on uncertain futures. She reminds him that all they can do is strive for a favorable outcome, and he silently nods in agreement. Upon reaching their destination, they meet their employer, who greets them as the hero and his retainer, requesting their aid in vanquishing the Demon King and saving the world. Without hesitation, Kurt accepts, vowing to give his utmost, while Ulisha stands momentarily stunned by the audacious request. The old man's daughter-in-law arrives, explaining that her father-in-law has been losing his grip on reality lately, often rambling nonsensically. She advises Kurt and Ulisha not to take his words to heart, then thanks them for coming, revealing herself as the client who requested their help. She then outlines the task, but not before casually remarking that the pair looks like a charming family, leaving both Kurt and Ulisha flustered. Before they can correct the misunderstanding, Aurori chimes in, calling Kurt Papa and Ulisha Mama Uli, as if she has several mothers. Ulisha's face turns crimson, utterly speechless, while Kurt worries if he has somehow offended her and resolves to make it up to her through his work. When the lady explains that their pig farm is in trouble, with the livestock growing pale and refusing to eat, Kurt inspects the pens. He quickly deduces that the pigs are likely suffering from heat exhaustion. He offers to prepare a special feed to remedy the situation, and the lady agrees, excusing herself to take her father-in-law for a walk. Kurt then seeks out Ulisha, finding her still rooted to the same spot, her cheeks as red as ever, clearly lost in thought about the earlier misunderstanding. Misinterpreting her silence as anger, he quickly sets to work on the feed, hoping to make amends while Aurori darts around him playfully. Once finished, he feeds the pigs, determined to set things right. When Ulisha finally snaps back to reality, she slaps her cheeks repeatedly, scolding herself for letting her mind wander into forbidden thoughts. She insists that her focus is purely professional, dedicated to protecting the oblivious boy, yet her heart races whenever she glances at him, leaving her confused about her own feelings. Just then, a dragon soars overhead, landing near Kurt and Aurori. Ulisha panics, but Kurt quickly reassures her, explaining that in rural regions like his village, it's not unusual for dragons to join livestock for a meal. Ulisha knows full well that this isn't remotely normal, but she chooses not to argue. Aurori, mesmerized by the majestic creature, innocently asks if she can pet the dog, prompting Kurt to correct her, explaining that it's a young dragon, not a canine. Suddenly, Ulisha catches the metallic scent of blood. Investigating, she discovers a downed phantom soldier from Mimiko's protection squad, unconscious and clearly outmatched. Just then, something rustles in the nearby bushes, and Ulisha swiftly draws her blade. Moments later, Kurt hears the unmistakable clash of steel, and Ulisha's urgent shout, commanding him to grab Aurori and flee. Kurt scoops Aurori into his arms, but before they can escape, a shadowy figure emerges, claws gleaming like blades, demanding they hand over the child. Kurt, completely misunderstanding, assumes she's talking about the young dragon, and bluntly asks if she's a dragon hunter. Despite Kurt's obliviousness, Ulisha senses a far graver threat and urges him to retreat immediately. The baby dragon, showing far more instinctive wisdom, seizes Kurt and Aurori in its jaws and soars into the sky, whisking them to safety. For a brief moment, Ulisha acknowledges Kurt's remarkable talent, having managed to tame a notoriously untamable creature. She then turns to confront her assailant, clashing blades with the mysterious woman from 2. However, Ulisha quickly finds herself outmatched, her defense crumbling as the clawed attacker drives her to the ground. Struggling to her feet, Ulisha demands to know whether the woman sought the dragon or Aurori when she mentioned the child. But her adversary offers no answer, clearly confident that Ulisha won't live long enough to act on the information. The woman strikes, disarming Ulisha and landing a vicious blow to her stomach, forcing her to her knees. Despite the searing pain, Ulisha refuses to yield, hurling Kurt's magic crystal like a makeshift grenade in a desperate final attack. Meanwhile, the lady from earlier continues her stroll with her father-in-law, pausing at the distant explosion. Her father-in-law mutters about the Demon King rampaging, but she dismisses his words as another delusion, just as before. Ulisha, panting and bloodied, believes the battle is over, only for her opponent to rise from the rubble, revealing a pair of sharp, twisted horns. The woman's true nature as a demon becomes undeniable, confirming the old man's seemingly mad prophecy. She smirks, revealing that she has been watching Ulisha's group since the city's fall, fully aware that they have already slain a demon lord. Ulisha, weaponless and battered, contemplates her fate, finding solace in the thought that at least Kurt might find refuge in their town with the dragon. As she prepares to meet her end, a familiar voice cuts through her despair. It's Kurt, standing beside her once more. Before she can process this, the dragon hurls Kurt into a tree, confirming her grim assessment. Riding a dragon hasn't magically made him a warrior. He's still the same clumsy, unskilled fighter she's always known. She rushes to him, demanding to know why he returned, why he chose to die alongside her, knowing full well he lacks the strength for such a battle. He admits his decision was reckless, but insists he came back solely to escape with her. Before she can fully grasp his words, a sudden commotion catches her attention. A herd of pigs charges toward them, their stampede distracting the demon long enough for them to climb onto one of the pigs and make a desperate escape. As they ride, she inquires about Aurori, and Kurt reassures her. Ori is safe, waiting for us. She presses him again, questioning his choice to risk everything. He concedes that it was a rash decision, but he couldn't abandon someone precious to him to die while he fled. She remains emotionally detached, recognizing that his words set her apart from Lizelot, whose affection had always been a delusion. She understands that when he calls her precious, it's meant in a platonic sense, yet a bittersweet warmth stirs within her. Is this love? She has no time to ponder as a sudden inferno engulfs the pigs, sending them plummeting to the ground. The demon reappears, flames in hand. She swiftly borrows Kurt's blade, though she knows she's no match for it. She can't betray his trust after he risked his life to save her, so she attempts the fire-cleaving technique, a delicate, unperfected skill. Her strike fails, yet astonishingly she remains unscathed. She then notices Aurori perched on her head, realizing the demon had withdrawn its flames. Could Aurori be the child the demon sought? The unanswered question lingers as she collapses from exhaustion. Kurt quickly tends to her, and Aurori gently touches her, whispering that she'll be fine. When she regains consciousness, her first question is how Aurori leapt onto her head earlier. Kurt's response leaves her speechless. Aurori had been far away at the time, meaning she had used teleportation magic. This revelation is staggering, as teleportation remains an unrefined and largely theoretical art, even among the most skilled mages. More astonishingly, Aurori managed it without a teleportation stone. She asks if Aurori can replicate the feat, but the child simply shakes her head, saying no, before she can probe further. Pig arrives, urgently drawing their attention. They find the surrounding pigs stricken with illness, prompting Kurt and Aurori to immediately begin healing them. Meanwhile, Ulisha returns the pigs to their owner. When the woman inquires about her husband, Ulisha merely replies that a villager helped him, and that he has gone to express his gratitude, the villager being none other than the dragon. As they soar through the skies, the dragon suddenly calls Kurt's attention to something, prompting him to depart while Aurori and Ulisha press on. Ulisha's mind remains preoccupied with Aurori. Had she been the one to dispel the magic earlier? Aurori denies it, confirming that the demon willingly withdrew the flames, raising even more questions about her connection to the child. Abruptly, they spot the dragon returning with Kurt, accompanied by an unexpected visitor. The demon herself. Kurt explains that after the dragon spirited him away, he discovered the demon severely wounded. Unsure of his next move, he chose to create an antidote for her. When she questions his intentions, calling him a fool for aiding an enemy, he admits his own recklessness but insists that her act of mercy, retracting her flames, saved both Ulisha and Aurori, compelling him to repay the gesture. As she drinks the antidote, a surge of vitality courses through her before she abruptly collapses again. Kurt confesses that he laced the antidote with a potent sedative, ensuring she remains unconscious for 3 days. Despite his willingness to extend compassion, he can't overlook the harm she inflicted on his people. And this, he asserts, is her just punishment. She is momentarily stunned, but he swiftly bundles her into his cart. The sight of the demon leaves Ulisha conflicted. Is this a reckless gamble or perhaps a necessary risk? She has no clear answer, yet she presses on. Returning home after several grueling days feels like a long-awaited reprieve. Sina and the others rush to embrace Aurori, relieved to see her safe. Even Lizelot hurries to join them, her arms open for a hug. Ulisha, despite knowing she should keep Lizelot and Aurori apart, decides to overlook it for today. It's a moment of reunion after all. Lost in her thoughts, she is abruptly pulled back to reality as a stranger descends from the atelier. To her surprise, Lizelot introduces this unfamiliar man as the new atelier meister. Ulisha grows wary of the newcomer and swiftly instructs Kurt to head to the kitchen to prepare their meal, while directing Sina to escort Ori to the playroom. Once they leave, Ulisha turns to Rakudo, only for him to pin her against the carriage. Unfazed by his boldness, she attempts to strike him with a Nutcracker 3000, but her kick passes through him. She immediately discerns the truth and accuses Lies of making a poor joke. The princess merely smirks, impressed that Ulisha deduced Rakudo is an illusion conjured with Kurt's dagger. Ulisha notes how remarkable the dagger must be to manifest illusions of people who don't even exist. Lies explains that Rakudo is her imagined version of Kurt at age 20. She then dispels the illusion. Just then, Ulisha receives a message from Mimiko, who says she'll arrive shortly with Ori's background check results. The day arrives, and all eyes turn to Mimiko, eager for revelations. Yet she appears only to taste Kurt's cooking, announcing their investigation failed. She reveals that Julie's collected hair and saliva samples showed only human DNA, but strange magical crystal matter was found in Ori's nails, imbued with spatial magic lost since the age of creation. Kurt asks if this implies Ori is a monster, but Mimiko admits she's uncertain. Still, the absence of any concrete information renders Ori extremely dangerous. Mimiko suggests sealing her teleportation magic and isolating her in one of her labs, but Kurt refuses. When she asks why, Kurt counters by asking if she thinks he's dangerous. Mimiko responds that as a friend, she doesn't believe he would ever harm her. Kurt responds that his reason is simple. He never senses any threat from Ori. He's indifferent to whether she's human because he knows she's gentle and incapable of harming others. He asserts that Akori will remain with them. Julie concurs, stating that without proof of her being a monster, they have no right to treat her as one. Lies supports them, firmly telling Mimiko she won't allow anyone to take their daughter. Mimiko acknowledges their stance and entrusts Akori to their care. She then inquires about the captured demon, whom Kurt still believes is a dragon hunter. He explains that she's confined in the basement. As Mimiko proceeds to interrogate her, he pleads that the woman not be imprisoned harshly. Mimiko withholds the truth, that the woman is a demon, humanity's sworn enemy, destined for a fate far worse than prison. She brings Yuli to the cell where they awaken the demon woman and ask if she can speak. The woman replies cryptically, stating warriors only speak what's essential. Mimiko deduces her brevity stems from duty, not ignorance. Offended, the demon attempts to incinerate her with magic, but the room crafted by Kurt nullifies it with anti-magic properties. Mimiko informs her she's powerless here and asks if any comrades are nearby. The demon answers that losers must obey victors, but since Kurt defeated her, she will respond only to his questions. With a sigh, Mimiko summons Kurt and Lies. Kurt immediately asks how she's feeling. She complains about the ropes binding her arms. He replies that they can't be removed, but she interrupts, asking if Kurt truly knows Hilda. He affirms. Julie, curious, asks about the name. Kurt explains that Hilda was the daughter of a merchant who frequently visited their village. She, like the woman before them, bore horns. The demon asks if Hilda wore a griffin crest. Kurt confirms. At this, the woman's energy surges. She reveals Hilda is imprisoned beneath Margrave Team's castle and declares her intent to rescue her. The group is stunned, and Kurt immediately insists they must go save her. Julie, skeptical, distrusts the demon's intentions and accuses her of manipulating Kurt. She questions why she attacked Ori if she seeks to save Hilda. The demon responds that she was tracking Tone, who was already investigating them, and followed their group. There, she witnessed Ori teleporting into the carriage and believed her powers could help rescue Hilda. Kurt believes her instantly, but Julie reminds him they still lack evidence. The demon urges them to examine her pendant. Yulia retrieves it from beneath her chest armor, and Kurt instantly recognizes it as Hilda's. The demon explains Hilda entrusted it to her. When she saw Yuli wielding Kurt's dagger with the griffin insignia, she halted her assault. Kurt confirms Hilda had gifted him that dagger and now sees her claim as credible. Even Mimiko begins to trust her and promises they'll rescue Hilda, but the demon must remain detained. Kurt requests she stay in the room. She introduces herself as Saul, inviting him to use her name. He's pleased by the familiarity, but suddenly Akori teleports between them. Panic erupts, then subsides. Kurt approaches Mimiko, uncertain how to proceed. She promptly calls a private meeting to devise a plan. Using her spy network, she presents a map of Tone's mansion. His wife and daughter are confirmed deceased. There's a restricted chamber only he enters, where he's often seen bringing food. Saul states she attempted entry but failed. Even Mimiko's agents couldn't access the room. Lies devises a plan to use illusions to simulate a thief phasing through the wall, anticipating it will trigger Ton's panic and compel him to unlock the door. She proposes using the false 8th Meister Rikuto for the ruse, and the group concurs. Julie expresses concern about leaving Kurt alone in the atelier with a demon, but Lies includes him in the plan. She explains Ton is hosting a 3-day festival in his domain, providing the perfect pretext to present Rikuto as the new Atelier Meister, and claim they're researching local culture. These justifications are mere cover. Both Lies and Julie want a festival date with Kurt. The operation is set for day 3, coinciding with the night executions, also ensuring each gets a full day alone with him before the event ends. The group departs for Ton's territory. En route, Kurt speaks with Rikuto, apologizing for involving him in the rescue. But Rikuto, being a projection of Lies' thoughts, replies that as nobility, it's his duty to oppose corrupt nobles. Julie and Lies panic at the revelation, but when Rikuto asks Kurt to keep his royal lineage secret, they relax slightly. Upon arriving at the inn, Rikuto leaves first to prepare for his meeting with Ton. Julie informs Kurt she'll infiltrate Ton's mansion the next day, and he'll be responsible for Lies and Ori. He offers to assist, but Lies interjects, reminding him he's committed to surveying the market with her. She guilt-trips him emotionally, saying Akori is thrilled to attend her first festival with her father. Kurt agrees to accompany them to the market. The next day, Ori and Lies revel in the festival. Lies asks if Kurt had experienced many festivals during his adventuring days. He replies they visited numerous cities and events, but he was always stuck handling repairs and guarding the carriage while his party celebrated. Lies teases him, but Kurt considers it natural for the one managing logistics to miss out. Still, he wants to be a good father and give Akori what he never had, thus his agreement to attend. Lies suddenly takes his hand, urging him to enjoy this festival as recompense for the ones he missed. Kurt is touched. Unbeknownst to him, Lies plans to confess her feelings at the end of their date. The trio cherishes their time at the event. That evening, Lies guides them to a garden where Ori can play with other children, hoping for a quiet moment with Kurt. She believes he's in high spirits from the day's joy, perfect for her confession. Yet when she approaches, she sees a somber look on his face. Confused, she notices they're in front of Ton's castle. Kurt is silently gazing at it. Realizing she overlooked this, she gently asks if he's thinking about Hilda. He reassures her, saying he trusts everyone to keep their promise to rescue Hilda, but admits feeling helpless for being unable to contribute directly. Lies begins listing his accomplishments, but Kurt downplays them, believing anyone could have done the same. She wonders how to make him see his worth and decides now isn't the right time for a confession. Instead, she tells him she deeply respects and admires him, and so does everyone at the workshop. She assures him they all care for him, which is why they're united in saving Hilda. Kurt, moved to tears, says he feels the same and wants to do more for them. Lies vows they'll continue supporting each other. Just then, Akori calls out, she's hungry. Their heartfelt moment ends as Kurt rushes to her. Lies feels she missed her perfect opportunity but smiles, having seen his genuine happiness. She promises herself she'll confess soon. After Eurytia's sword shattered last time, she asked Kurt to forge her a new one. Before the festival, she contacted a renowned dwarven blacksmith and returned to her mine. Kurt quickly discovered mithril and adamantite scattered about. The dwarf was astonished at how effortlessly Kurt found them. When it came time to forge, the dwarf doubted Kurt's ability. Mithril is infamously hard to manipulate, yet Kurt melted it with ease. Though skeptical, the dwarf allowed him to use the forge. To his amazement, Kurt crafted a masterwork blade in under an hour. Stunned, the blacksmith resolved to travel and refine his craft to one day match Kurt's skill. Eurytia was thrilled to receive the sword, especially since it was the first gift Kurt had given her. In the present, it's time for her date with him. Kurt and Lent stroll through town as the second day of the festival begins. Akori, exhausted from yesterday's events, stays in bed, which suits Eurytia. She gets Kurt all to herself and already has several fun places planned. Suddenly, a commotion draws her attention. She spots a father-daughter stall being looted by thugs. Eurytia considers ignoring it. She doesn't want to interrupt her date. She pretends not to notice. But Kurt is already moving to help. He approaches the stall and demands the delinquents stop. They tell him to back off, but Kurt insists they explain themselves. The thugs reply they hate the taste of the vendor's meat buns and are trashing the stall so no one else has to eat them. Kurt considers it disrespectful to demean someone's effort as trash, so he picks up a meat bun and offers to buy it. After tasting it, he praises the vendor's excellent meat selection and preparation. The thugs, annoyed by Kurt spoiling their amusement, react. The shorter one shoves him. Lacking combat skills, Kurt stumbles back. At that moment, Eurytia intervenes, informing the thugs that Kurt is affiliated with Atelier. Upon hearing this, the delinquents hesitate. Alchemists hold significant influence in the kingdom, then flee. Kurt checks on the vendor and discovers he sustained a few fractured bones. Deeply concerned, Lent suggests a few sips of Kurt's potion would suffice to mend them. But Kurt, doubting his own abilities, insists on taking the man to a hospital and rushes off before Eurytia can stop him. She's disheartened, fearing the date may be ruined, but hearing the vendor's daughter cry, she realizes her concerns may be misplaced. Just then, Lent spots one of Mimiko's operatives disguised as a melon vendor and approaches for intel. The agent informs Eurytia about an upcoming cooking contest that afternoon. The meat bun stall had intended to compete, but Gargle Restaurant, the reigning champion, feared losing its title and hired thugs to sabotage the competition. Eurytia concludes her date was disrupted by Gargle's spite, but with the threat handled, she's confident they can resume it. When Kurt returns, he informs Lent that the man will remain hospitalized until tomorrow, and has asked him to oversee the shop and care for his daughter. Ulyssea's hopes for a normal date are officially dashed, so she channels her frustration into resolve, vowing to obliterate Gargle Restaurant for sabotaging her plans. Kurt, bewildered, prompts Ulysses to clarify. She explains a cooking competition will be held later, and she intends to help the bun stall win. However, the girl insists they no longer stand a chance. The thugs discarded all the meat bun paste, leaving nothing to sell or submit. Ulysses reassures her, promising that she and Kurt will assist. She asks Kurt if he can craft delectable meat buns. Of course he can, but he won't be the one preparing them. His would be too perfect. Instead, Ulysses wants him to teach Luna the recipe, enabling her to carry on the craft once they're gone. Luna pledges to do her best to make her father proud. Ulysses rises, determined. They will remake the buns and claim victory. First, though, they need ingredients. She asks Kurt what's required. He instructs her to procure spineless cacti from nearby stalls and retrieve the bag of beans he won at the festival. While she does that, he says he'll begin digging right there. Ulysses is fully on board. Until he mentions digging. She reminds him the plaza is property of the Lord. Kurt responds that it's fine, he can dig swiftly enough that no one will be inconvenienced. That, however, wasn't what Ulysses was concerned about. When Kurt asks if she knows where he might borrow a shovel, she insists he obtain permission before initiating construction on property that isn't his. Meanwhile, across town, Gargle is entertaining the contest judges with his signature delicacies, receiving lavish praise for their refined flavor. He's confident he'll secure this year's title, partially because he bribed the judges in advance and already ensured his competition was sabotaged. To his dismay, he overhears murmurs about some extraordinary buns being sold nearby. Alarmed, he hurries over, fully convinced his hired thugs eliminated the bun stall. To his shock, not only does the stall remain intact, but its business is thriving. There's even a new spa-like setup beside it, which he doesn't recall ever being built. Soon, the judges themselves arrive, curious after hearing raves about the buns. Gargle panics. He can't let them taste them. Desperate, he tries to discredit the stall, claiming the buns are spoiled due to their black paste. Before he can finish, Luna interjects, presenting a platter of buns to the judges. She calmly explains that while the paste is black, it's delicious, crafted from boiled beans and matured cactus nectar, offering a unique, sweet, savory blend. Her eloquence piques their interest, and upon tasting, the judges instantly understand the widespread acclaim. As a final note, the buns are only 1 copper each. Despite the flavor, Gargle refuses to believe the buns are truly exceptional. Until he samples one himself and is forced to concede. The judges inquire about the secret behind the bun's fluffiness, prompting Ulysses to step in. She explains that the temporary proprietor got overly enthusiastic with preparation and discovered that boiling the dough in water mixed with baking soda, drawn directly from a hot spring, produces optimal results. Gargle scoffs and accuses Ulysses of lying, claiming there's no hot spring nearby. She retorts that the temporary owner dug one earlier today. He remains skeptical until she mentions Kurt is a member of the new retalier, making it more plausible. Furious that Kurt and Ulysses have sabotaged his contest victory, Gargle threatens to report them for unauthorized construction on Taiwan's land. Even retaliers aren't above the law. But Ulysses had anticipated this and already sent Li to obtain permission directly from Taiwan. With the third princess now officially endorsing the stall, Gargle's threat is rendered useless. However, they did have to cede the hot spring to city administration as part of the agreement. So Kurt converted it into a public foot spa for tourism. Gargle begins to unravel. It seems impossible for a humble bun stall to wield such influence. Still, he has one final scheme. He corners a judge, reminding him of the promised bribe in exchange for favoring his entry, yet the bean buns are too extraordinary. The judge rejects the offer, refusing to tarnish his integrity. Just then, Gargle spots the thugs he hired lurking nearby and urges them to destroy the stall, vowing to cover their bail. Suddenly, a girl's voice calls out, and the illusion dissipates, revealing Lise. The actual thugs had already been apprehended for property damage, and Gargle's confession of hiring them was recorded. Alone, that wouldn't warrant a lengthy sentence. Fortunately, Ulysses unearthed further incriminating evidence. Gargle was the supplier for Tacum's personal chef, and had been illicitly lacing food with addictive substances. An indisputable crime, warranting immediate arrest. Gargle realizes he's been exposed, but refuses to surrender quietly. He draws a knife and lunges at Lise in a desperate bid to escape, only to be swiftly subdued by two of Mimiko's agents. Ulysses informs him he's worsened his situation dramatically. As Lee is the third princess, attacking her now constitutes treason. Gargle is hauled away, and it's astonishing to think it all began with his obsession over winning a trivial contest. After his arrest, Lee smugly reminds Ulysses she still didn't manage to have a proper date with Kurt. Ulysses, however, is content knowing she brought smiles to Luna and Kurt's faces today. Later, Taiwan is notified of Gargle's arrest and is stunned, as Gargle was the sole food supplier for his castle. Hoping to resolve the issue, he inquires about the charges, only to learn Gargle assaulted Princess Lee at the festival. There's nothing Taiwan can do to reverse such a grave offense, so he abandons any attempt to intervene. Still, a problem remains. Lee is expected for tea tomorrow, and without a supplier, Taiwan is at a loss. His assistant proposes a solution: hire the popular bun stall from the festival to prepare refreshments. With no alternatives, Taiwan agrees to employ them as his new culinary source in anticipation of Lee's visit. Meanwhile, Lee has been behaving unusually. She unexpectedly approached Taiwan in person today to request a building permit, then casually stated she'd return for tea. The following day, accompanied by the atelier, Tom grows anxious, fearing she may have uncovered his true intentions. Yet none of that matters as long as he can meet the atelier and express his deepest desire. That morning, Lee and the others prepare to execute their plan to rescue Hildegard. Their objective is to access the concealed chamber behind the kitchen. While they can't confirm Hildegard's presence, it remains their most promising lead. Kurt informs them he'll assist Luna with a large order at her stall today, though it shouldn't interfere with their mission. Once Kurt departs, Lee and Ulysses review the operation. Lee will use an illusion of herself and Rakudo to distract Taiwan, ultimately tricking him into unlocking the secret room, allowing them to investigate its contents. However, en route, they receive a message from one of Mimiko's informants. Kurt and Luna have been commissioned by Taiwan to cater today's tea gathering, and are currently stationed in the kitchen adjacent to the secret room. Hours earlier, under the full moon at the dumpling stall, Kurt was doing all he could to assist the vendor's family. Just before dawn, a warrior arrived with a few soldiers, declaring that his commander had officially requested the boys' hot spring dumplings. Kurt was instructed to prepare 100 immediately. Kurt pledged to fulfill the order and personally deliver it to the castle. To keep the soldiers from idling, he offered them a fresh batch he had just made. Upon tasting them, the men were astounded by their exquisite flavor. The officer leading the unit remarked that despite working continuously during the event, he no longer felt fatigued. Kurgan simply noted that it was natural to feel revitalized after consuming sweets. Once the 100 dumplings were ready, Kurt was escorted to the castle. En route, he tried recalling who governed the territory, only remembering as he stood at the gates of Margrave Tien's palace, the very place where Hildegard was imprisoned. Without delay, he was taken to the kitchen and informed the dumplings were intended for the princess. Panic set in. What if he was punished for improper service? But the palace staff reassured him, asking that he remain at the castle until the day's festivities concluded, as either the Margrave or the princess might summon him. Meanwhile, in a hall where nobles had gathered, Margrave Tien was apologizing for an official's discourtesy toward Leas the day prior. Leas brushed it off, saying it was no matter. What would have been worse, she said, was if the Margrave had assigned someone to shadow her. Flustered, Tien stammered a denial, though Ulysses could tell her friend was navigating the situation adeptly. Even so, she felt uneasy leaving Lysello alone with the man just yet. Meanwhile, if she intended to remain, all she could do was hope Kurt Rockens wouldn't botch anything. As for the boy, he was idly waiting in the kitchen while Akiri mimicked feeding her stuffed toy. Anxiety gnawed at him. Was the team executing their roles? This was their moment to act, yet dread paralyzed him. He kept glancing at a dubious-looking door, convinced Hildegard was behind it, attempting to aid her father. Suddenly, Akiri seized him and teleported them past the door, stunning him with her remarkable power. Startled but intrigued, Kurt asked to return to avoid arousing suspicion. Akiri, however, admitted she couldn't teleport again immediately. This led Kurt to infer that she couldn't perform back-to-back jumps. The girl began to tear up, thinking she had ruined everything. But Kurt never rebuked or blamed her. On the contrary, he swiftly adjusted and proceeded with what he had. Then a woman's voice echoed from another door in the eerie hallway. Convinced it was Hildegard, he attempted to unlock it, an intricate lock no one had ever bypassed. But this wasn't just anyone. This was Kurt Rockens. Armed with only a makeshift pick, resolve, and a stroke of protagonist fortune, he cracked it open. Instead of Hildegard, he was met by an older woman, her expression vacant. Elsewhere in the drawing room, Tien cut to the chase, proposing that Rakudo assume the role of viceroy. Before replying, Rakudo requested a private conversation with the Margrave. The abrupt request made Tien raise an eyebrow, already sensing something amiss. The duplicate of Leah's offered to step out for discretion. As she exited, Tien gave a knowing smile, one masked by her magic. The real Lysello instantly went on high alert. His smirk made it evident this cunning fox was concealing something. Rakudo, acknowledging he wasn't as adept a negotiator as Lady Lysello, dispensed with pleasantries and asked what the Margrave truly sought from him. The elder smiled, remarking that Rakudo clearly understood how the world operated and wasn't lacking in diplomatic acumen. Then he inquired, "Are you, by any chance, interested in eternal youth?" Meanwhile, the enigmatic woman regarded Kurt merely as an odd guest and offered him a room to rest. Kurt attempted to discern her identity but was clueless. Akiri intervened, asking if the woman felt ill. She confessed she had recently lost her appetite. Hearing this, the girl offered one of her father's dumplings. Without hesitation, the woman accepted and, despite her aversion to food, found it sublime. Believing he had deduced her identity, Kurt asked why she appeared so aged. The woman was shocked, not only that he noticed but that he had also picked the lock and created such an extraordinary dumpling. Piecing it together, she began to suspect Rockins was some sort of sorcerer. He insisted he was merely an ordinary man working at an atelier. Regardless, the woman then disclosed something startling. The demon girl Hildegard was imprisoned directly beneath this room. Stunned, Kurt scanned the area for tools, found a stale piece of bread, and declared he'd fashion it into a shovel with just a knife. Perplexed, the woman walked to the fireplace and pressed a concealed switch, revealing a hidden passage to where Hildegard was held. Back in the hall, Rakudo affirmed that eternal youth was indeed the ultimate aspiration of any atelier meister. Picone nodded. Achieving such a feat wasn't simple, yet many races like elves and demons lived vastly longer than humans. In the not-so-distant past, the nobleman explained, experiments were conducted using cellular material from certain species to prolong human life in this world. Rakudo responds that he's well aware of it. He vividly recalls the failed experiments and how the transplants were outlawed due to severe side effects. Yet with Rakudo's talents, Tien is confident they can formulate the elixir of eternal youth devoid of such consequences. He's heard rumors that the remedy Rakudo crafted in his atelier yielded remarkable outcomes. Listening intently, Lysello begins to suspect the noble intends to exploit Hildegard's cells for this pursuit. In fact, she could orchestrate a thief's intrusion and haul the schemer directly to her lair. But first, there's something else to address. Rakudo then questions the urgency, noting that working with demon cells contradicts the teachings of the Holy Poland Church and violates national law. He assumes the Margrave realizes he won't be complicit, though the man likely still intends to chase the ambition regardless. Surveying the room's opulent furnishings, the atelier meister doubts Tien is motivated by wealth or rank, so he asks, who exactly does the Margrave intend to test this miracle drug on? Tien replies that it's irrelevant, he needs the formula plain and simple. His refusal to elaborate only enrages Lysello. Suddenly, Alicia's voice pierces the air, shouting that bandits have breached the grounds. In a flash, he bursts in with Princess Lysello, shoving her into the chamber where the two men stand. She explains that intruders stormed the castle. Though most were repelled, one fled toward the kitchen, as if searching for someone. Drenched in sweat, Tien commands Lysello and Rakudo to remain where they are, instructing Alicia to guard them at all costs. He then bolts from the chamber. Simultaneously, the illusions dissipate, revealing that the real Lysello had been shadowing him through the concealed corridors she had finally breached. She observes as he reaches a door she had long intended to investigate. Tien notices fleeting shadows flickering at the doorknob. Gone in a blink, the door is ajar to his astonishment. Entering, he calls out for his daughter, Famil, but she's nowhere in sight. Dread floods him as he imagines she's been abducted by the intruders. Lysello silently witnesses his frantic search, incredulous. Everyone believes his daughter perished years ago. When Tien vanishes through the secret fireplace passage, she notices a single white hair on the bed. Sharpening her senses, she catches Kurt's scent. He had indeed been there. Yet the hair is not his. Before acting further, the princess opts to return to Alicia. Meanwhile, Famil guides Kurt into the chamber where Hildegard is imprisoned. Briefly, he regrets venturing alone without his comrades, but he knows this is the moment to act. Determined, he unlocks the door. Inside, Hildegard lies restrained by colossal chains and an intricate binding circle. Recognizing Kurt Rockins, Famil dispels the demonic torment consuming her. Kurt rushes to her, eager to assure her he's here to save her. But as he draws nearer, he's struck by a revelation. She hasn't aged a day in the past 10 years. Hildegard promptly lands a punch squarely on his face, seething with rage. She holds him accountable for everything, for the fact she hasn't aged a day since he gave her that cursed potion. Kurt sheepishly concedes he may have miscalculated the dosage of rainbow flowers. Hildegard rants on, Giving her that concoction was bad enough, but then he vanished from the village, leaving her trapped and utterly alone. Watching the demon girl unleash her fury, slapping him senseless, Ori intervenes, shouting that she's not allowed to hit her daddy. Hildegard halts mid-swing. "Daddy?" she demands clarification. "Did he father a child while she was rotting in this dungeon?" Kurt awkwardly explains Ori is a kind of fake daughter. She hatched from an aquatic bird egg. It's complicated. Hildegard drops the topic for now and admits she's starving. With no better option, Kurt offers his only food, a piece of bread harder than stone. Desperate, Hildegard attempts a bite and nearly shatters her fangs. Famil then inquires whether her immortality truly came from the potion. Hildegard affirms it and asks if he can recreate it. He replies that he hasn't encountered another rainbow flower since it was essential. Confronted with the grim reality, Hildegard expresses sympathy for Famil. The moment she says her name, Kurt nearly short-circuits. Famil, the very Famil presumed dead for years. It suddenly clicks. She's the Margrave's daughter, thought to have perished long ago from illness. Famil clarifies that's merely the tale her father spread. Now that Kurt knows her real age, she sees no reason to elaborate further. Gawking like a baffled fool, Kurt realizes he should have connected the dots sooner. But truthfully, he's still utterly bewildered, his only guess. Perhaps Tien couldn't bear to watch his daughter age so rapidly. He abducted Hildegard to engineer a serum for eternal youth. That theory triggers a memory. Kurt recalls a prior conversation with the Sakuras before their journey. They had questioned why the Margrave would detain Hildegard at all, and Cans noted that some individuals harbor eccentric obsessions. Now, connecting the threads, Hildegard's imprisonment, Tien's fixation, and Famil's decelerated aging, Kurt senses clarity emerging. At long last, Tien Kokilka reunites with his beloved daughter, revealing the depth of his concern. Kurt seizes the moment and confronts the noble directly, asserting that his actions are misguided. Preferences aside, no adult earns a pass for such behavior. Tien retorts that Kurt couldn't possibly understand, but Kurt argues otherwise. He's a father too. He cherishes Ori with everything he's got and accepts that all children inevitably grow. Tien, however, chose denial, refusing to let Famil mature, and effectively adopting the ageless Hildegard as a twisted surrogate. In defiance, Famil began consuming bizarre pills to desiccate herself into a mummy-like state. The harsh truth remains, this nobleman is a deluded lakin hiding behind fantasies. Despite everyone's attempts to ground Kurt, reasons never stood a chance against his resolve. His dreams always outpaced his logic. Ignoring all dissent, he turns to the Margrave, urging him to recall the day Famil was born, hoping the memory might remind him that no matter what, she'll forever be his little girl. On that sacred day, at least in Kurt's view, Tien must have thought, even if she grows old or appears like a shriveled husk, I'll love her just the same. Moved, Tien finally confesses that Famil is the cherished treasure his late wife Farnard left him, and that he vowed to live solely for her, even if it cost him his life. Kurt is elated to see the man finally grasp what truly matters. But before he gets swept away, Hildegard casts a paralysis spell, dropping him flat. She'd had enough of his monologue and simply wanted silence. With that settled, the demon girl turns to Famil and asks if she's truly certain about proceeding. Famil nods with unwavering resolve and delivers her request. She wants Hildegard to kill her father. Tun begins to sweat at her words and demands to know why Famil would say such a thing. Kurt silently echoes the same question, still clinging to the theory that she resents her father for attempting to replace her with Hildegard. Panicking, Tun bolts, shouting that he refuses to die in a place like this. He escapes the basement, but by the time he reaches Famil's room, Lies and Alicia are already there. Stunned by their presence, Tun freezes as Lies confronts him, revealing that she's uncovered his plan. She now understands that Famil suffers from the aging syndrome, and that Tun has been attempting to cure her. However, there's no known remedy, and even if one existed, it wouldn't reverse her physical degeneration. That's why Tun had been desperately trying to halt the aging process by developing an eternal youth serum using demon cells. Tun furiously admits it, saying he's exhausted every method over the past year following the instructions of a certain man, but nothing has worked. Frustrated and desperate, he declares he's done waiting and is now willing to sell his soul to a devil to save his daughter. He smashes a magical stone on the ground, activating a summoning circle. Before the girls can respond, Tun slices his palm and offers his blood to the circle in a final effort to summon a demon. But nothing happens. Panicked, he mutters that the circle should have activated. It's aligned with a ley line rich in mana. Lies then realizes the issue and informs him that the ley line was displaced when the hot spring was excavated in the center of town. Shocked, Tun suspects Lies had anticipated his plan and purposely had the hot springs constructed to sabotage him. He spirals into madness, while Lies smugly accepts credit, despite being unaware of the effect. At that moment, Hildegard arrives and Tun collapses in terror. The girls face each other, and Lies casually greets Hilda, saying she's already heard plenty about her from Saul and Kurt. Hildegard thanks her for watching over her Kurt all this time. The use of a possessive enrages Lies, who retorts with the same line, reminding Hilda that she too once cared for her Kurt. The atmosphere grows tense and Alicia interjects, asking where Kurt is now. Hilda replies that he's resting in the basement. She didn't want him witnessing what comes next. Suddenly, she draws her sword and levels it at Taeon, alarming Lies and Alicia. They demand to know her motive, and Hilda responds that this Jabba the Hutt look-alike will inevitably summon a demon, leading to countless innocent deaths and lost souls. Famil refuses to be saved at such a cost, which is why she asked Hilda to end her father's life. Crushed by her words, Taeon still insists on his daughter living a normal life, even if it means sacrificing his soul and others. Hilda prepares to strike, but Famil's voice rings out, halting her. Everyone turns to see Famil, now youthful once more, leaving them stunned. Taeon, in disbelief, asks if he's dreaming. Famil tells him Kurt healed her with his hot spring buns. Lies once again finds herself impressed by Kurt. Alicia mutters she should have anticipated it. Meanwhile, the paralysis spell on Kurt begins to fade, and he regains his voice. He instructs Ori to retrieve a brown bottle from his bag and administer one pill. She complies swiftly, and as soon as Kurt swallows the pill, he's fully recovered and heads off to assist Famil. Meanwhile, Famil and Taeon share an emotional moment interrupted by Lies. She reminds them that Talwan's crimes are severe, and not even his noble rank can shield him from justice. Famil pleads for clemency, offering herself in his place, insisting everything was for her sake. But Lies has other intentions. As a royal, she acknowledges she cannot disregard his offenses. However, today she stands not as royalty but as a girl training at Atelier 8. Thus she won't punish Taeon, but instead assign him to work for the Atelier from now on. Tun willingly accepts the sentence. Lies then turns to Hildegard, stating she must accompany her. They have much to discuss. But once finished, she will be returned safely. Alicia adds that all that remains is for Kurt to dispel the summoning circle. Suddenly another man enters, declaring that there will be no happy endings, because he's the one writing this tale. Hildegard identifies the gothic emo figure returning from Med Gala as Scriptor and mocks him, asking when he finally found the courage to appear in public. Lies and the others are baffled, uncertain who he is. Tun clarifies that Scriptor is the demon who entrusted Hildegard to him and taught him the demon summoning ritual. Scriptor then admits he had hoped Hildegard's allies would attack Tun upon learning she was being held captive, and expresses disappointment that they didn't. Hildegard replies that she anticipated his scheme and warned her allies to avoid any actions that might escalate tensions between humans and demons. Scriptor is displeased that the narrative he wrote for her was altered, which also reminds him of a past failure. His attempt to use a bishop to assassinate Lies had been thwarted. This revelation shocks everyone. Scriptor declares his disdain for interference in his orchestrations and is enraged that the aging curse he cast on Famil has been undone. Upon realizing he's the one responsible for his daughter's suffering, Tun is consumed by rage and charges at the demon. However, a magic barrier repels his blow. Alicia joins the assault, striking from the opposite side, yet the barrier surrounds him completely. Still, thanks to her holy blade crafted by Kurt, she manages to fracture the shield. Scriptor immediately recognizes the threat she poses. He opts to summon another demon to fight in his stead and retrieves a vial from his pocket. Hildegard urgently tells Alicia to seize it, but it's already too late. Scriptor pours the viscous liquid onto the summoning circle, activating it, and mockingly bids them enjoy his parting gift. As he vanishes, another demon materializes in his place. Alicia is aghast. It's the same demon she battled in the ruins. She exclaims, "How is he still alive?" He calmly explains that demons are spiritual entities. Their corporeal forms are mere vessels. He admits that their prior battle depleted his mana reserves, forcing his retreat from the human realm. While he continues monologuing, Lies attempts to cast an illusion with her blade, but the demon, having learned from their last encounter, instantly blasts the knife from her grip. Hildegard launches a hellfire barrage, followed by Lies and Alicia charging together. However, the demon counters with shadowed spikes, wounding them both. Alicia, grimacing in pain, wonders how he could strike back after taking Hildegard's attack directly. He reveals that only her sanctified blade could wound him, but now that her arm is injured, it's useless. He drives the obsidian spike deeper, eliciting agonized cries from them. Just then, Kurt enters. Lies and Alicia desperately warn him to retreat, insisting a demon is present. But Kurt shows no fear. Encounters with demons are hardly novel to him. What stuns him instead is the realization that he's facing a demon lord, thought to be long extinct. He suddenly recalls an old saying from his village: "Demon lords are like cockroaches if you see one. 100 more lurk unseen." The remark strikes a nerve. Enraged, the demon vows retribution and hurls a massive fireball at Kurt. A Curie intervenes, redirecting the blast back at the demon. The impact disrupts the dark spike, tormenting Alicia and Lies. As the demon prepares another volley, Alicia steps in front of Kurt, resolute in her intent to cleave through it. She slashes the fireball, but it doesn't dissipate. Still, she persists, convinced that with Kurt's enchanted blade she'll prevail. Suddenly, the sword absorbs the fireball, igniting with blue flames. Alicia retaliates. The sword unleashes the blue blaze in the form of a bird which strikes the demon with searing force. Racked with pain, he begins to panic, sensing another defeat. As a desperate final act, he attempts to take Hildegard with him. He fuses his hands into a spear capable of piercing anything and thrusts it at her. Chaos erupts, but Hildegard merely smiles, completely unharmed. The demon's arms shatter on contact. Stunned, he stammers. His attack could pierce Mythil itself. How did she survive? Hildegard pulls a piece of rock-hard bread from her dress, the one Kurt gave her. The demon descends into disbelief, screaming that no bread should be denser than Mythil. He demands to know who Kurt is. Kurt replies calmly, he's just the head of chores at an 8-year atelier. The demon reels in shock. Then realization dawns. He stammers, "Are you from Haste Village?" Kurt nods. The revelation is so psychologically devastating that the demon disintegrates on the spot. Later, Kurt explains that their village endured frequent assaults from demon lords. In response, they devised various countermeasures and eventually eradicated them. Alicia, reassured, suggests erasing the summoning circle, but before they can act, a black void opens beneath them. Hildegard immediately realizes that Scripter had used a specialized compound to summon the demon earlier without sacrificing human souls. However, the reagent merely postponed the cost. It now seeks to claim 100 human souls in recompense. Shadowy tendrils erupt from the void, assaulting everyone. Hildegard warns that the attack won't cease until the quota is fulfilled. At that moment, Tun's assistant arrives with a basket of stuffed buns. The tendrils lunge toward him, but instead of harming him, they devour the buns. Once consumed, both the tendrils and the magic circle vanish. Everyone is left baffled until the truth is revealed. The assistant is an agent of Bandana, the elusive member of Kurt's former party. She had informed him that stuffed buns weren't originally designed as food. They were crafted as a substitute for human offerings. However, only a rare artisan can create buns with the soul equivalent value required for summoning. Kurt, being one such individual, can produce as many as needed and command demons at will. Later, the assistant reports to Bandana that Tun publicly announced Famel's recovery, sparking a citywide celebration. Hildegard was interrogated by Mimiko, then cleared and allowed to return home with Saul. Bandana is pleased, believing her master was right to entrust her with protecting Kurt and a Curie from external threats. Tun grants Kurt the title of Knight, though Kurt feels unworthy. Others at the Atelier 8 also receive advancements, largely due to Lies manipulating Tun's authority. She's now confident that few nobles would dare challenge them again. Meanwhile, Hildegard returns home, carrying an orach flower crafted by Kurt as a farewell gift, a customary gesture in his village. She remains bewildered, silently noting that despite 1,200 years, Kurt is still the same distant fool she once knew.